I am just a chronicler and welcome you to another video. Since I know many of you watch to relax and fall asleep, I thought it would be nice if you left a comment telling me where you're listening from and if it's raining there. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the episodes. Now, it's time to get comfortable, relax, and begin. The storm hit Fortress just after Vespers. Lightning split the sky, thunder shook the stone walls. Brother Raymond gripped my shoulder in the library doorway. Watch the manuscripts, novice. Water gets in through the south wall when it rains like this. If any scrolls get wet, move them immediately. Yes, brother, and Thomas. He hesitated. Don't read anything marked with a red seal. Those are for professed brothers only. He left me alone in the vast library. Hundreds of shelves stretched into the shadows, thousands of scrolls and codices, and me, a novice of 3 months, to guard them all. The candles guttered in the draught. I pulled my cloak tighter and began my rounds. Water was already seeping through the south wall. Dark stains spread across the stone. I moved quickly, checking the nearby shelves for any signs of dampness. A flash of lightning illuminated the room. In that instant, I saw it. A piece of parchment on my usual writing desk. I hadn't left anything. There, I approached slowly. The parchment was fresh, crisp. The ink still shone wet in the candlelight. My hand shook as I read the first line. It was my handwriting. My exact script that I'd spent months practicing, but I hadn't written this. I can't stay here anymore. The things I've seen in the restricted scrolls, the rest was blank, waiting to be written. Another lightning flash, more parchment on the desk now, more of my handwriting, the symbols in the margins, the words that change. When you read them alone at night, Brother Raymond warned me, but I didn't listen. I backed away. My foot hit something. A book lying open on the floor. I hadn't seen it there before. The pages were filled with my script. Line after line of my deepest thoughts. Doubts about my vocation. Questions I'd never dared speak aloud. "This isn't real," I said. My voice echoed off the shelves. More lightning, more thunder. More pages appearing on every surface. My handwriting covered them all. Confessions, fears, secrets I'd never told anyone. It's just the storm playing tricks. Just shadows, and is it? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. My voice. I spun around. Empty library. Just books and shadows. Who's there? You know who. More pages fluttered down from the darkness above. I caught one. Read my own words. I should have left when I had the chance. Before I learned what the red seals hide. Before I understood what we really guard in this library. I haven't read anything forbidden, I said to the empty room. I haven't broken my vows. Not yet. Lightning struck closer. The thunder was deafening now. In the flashes, I saw more papers, more words, more secrets written in my hand. Stop this. We can't stop what's already written. I haven't written any of this, but you will. The candles went out, all at once. I fumbled for my flint, hands shaking. Before I could strike a spark, more lightning filled the library. In that frozen moment of light, I saw them, pages and pages floating in the air. A whirlwind of parchment, all covered in my writing. And in the center, a figure. Me, but not me. Older, harder, with eyes that had seen too much. What are you? What you become? What the library makes of you? I don't understand. Read the pages, all of them. See what you'll write, what you'll learn, what you'll become. The papers swirled closer. Words jumped out at me in the lightning flashes. My betrayal of Brother Raymond. My theft of the forbidden scrolls. My discovery of the truth beneath the library. This isn't real, I said again. But my voice shook. As real as the red-sealed scroll you'll steal tomorrow night. As real as the symbols you'll find hidden in its margins. As real as the door those symbols will open. Lightning struck the tower directly above. The boom of thunder was like the world ending. In that searing flash, I saw what was written on the walls. My handwriting again, but huge. Giant letters scrawled across. The stone, the truth about the library, about the Templars, about what lay beneath Fortress. Stop reading, my other self said, while you still can, but I couldn't stop. The words pulled at my eyes, drew them from line to line, page to page. I read about the door in the lowest cellar, the one behind the wine racks, the one the symbols would open. I read about what waited behind it, what had always waited there, what the Templars really guarded. Enough, I covered my eyes. I don't want to know, too late. It's already written. The lightning came faster now. Strobe flashes that turned the swirling pages into a dance of frozen moments. I saw myself stealing the scroll, saw myself learning the symbols, saw myself finding the door, saw what happened when I opened it. You can still choose, my other self said. This future isn't certain. Then why show me? Because choice is an illusion. The pages are already written, the words already set. We just haven't read them all. Yet, the candles relit themselves. The pages settled to the floor. My other self stood before me. Solid now, real. Pick up your quill, he said. It's time to write what happens next. My hand moved on its own, gripped the quill, dipped it in ink. The parchment waited, blank, pure, ready. Tell them what you found in the library, my other self whispered. Tell them what waits behind the door. Tell them why you had to leave. But I haven't found anything. Haven't left, not yet. But it's already written. Look. He pointed to the far wall. More of my writing appeared there, growing like dark vines across the stone. The rest of the story, the part I hadn't lived yet, the part I was about to write. Thunder shook the fortress, lightning painted the library in stark shadows, and I began to write. The words flowed like water, like fate, like truth. I wrote about the door, about what lay behind it, about why I had to run. When Brother Raymond found the library empty the next morning, only one page remained on my desk. My confession, my warning, my truth, written in my hand, but not by me. Not yet. The storm passed, the library dried, the words faded from the walls, but sometimes, late at night, pages still appear on my desk. Words still write themselves in my hand. And somewhere in Fortress, behind a door I haven't opened yet, something is waiting. Waiting for me to write the rest of the story. Waiting for me to become what the pages say I'll be. Waiting for me to read what's already written. Story 2. The sandstorm hit without warning. One moment the sky was clear. The next it was a wall of brown rushing toward our fortress at Jaffa. I ordered the gates closed, the shutters barred. Then the knocking came. 3 sharp raps on the main gate. Impossible to hear over the howling wind, but I heard them. We all did. Open in the name of Christ, a voice called, clear as chapel bells through the storm. I signaled the guards. The gates creaked open just enough to admit a single figure. He was tall, wrapped in a sand-caked pilgrim's robe. The hood shadowed his face. He carried no staff, no pack, just a small leather pouch at his belt. "Welcome to the temple," I said. "I am Brother Gerard, Hospitalier of Jaffa." The pilgrims who'd turned toward me. I couldn't see his face, but I felt him smile. "I know who you are, Gerard of Toulouse. I know all the brothers here." My spine went cold. I hadn't been Gerard of Toulouse for 20 years, not since taking my vows. The pilgrim walked past me into the courtyard. His feet left no prints in the sand. "You'll want to check the east wall before sunset," he said. "The foundations are weakening. Brother Thomas will find the crack tomorrow, but by then it will be too late." I stared at him. Brother Thomas was on patrol at the east wall right now. A crash from that direction. Shouts of alarm. "Go," the pilgrim said. "Save your brother." I ran. The storm blinded me, but I knew the way. 20 years in this fortress, I could walk it. Blindfolded, the east wall was crumbling. A section of foundation had shifted. Brother Thomas lay trapped beneath fallen stones. We got him out alive, barely. His legs were crushed. When I returned to the courtyard, the pilgrim stood exactly where I'd left him. The storm raged around him, but not a grain of sand touched his robe. "How did you know?" "The same way I know about the letter hidden in your cell. The one from your sister in Toulouse. The one telling you about your father's death 3 months ago." My hand went to my chest, where the unopened letter lay inside my tunic. I hadn't told anyone about it. "Who are you?" The pilgrim pushed back his hood. My own face looked back at me, older, scarred, but unmistakably mine. "I am what you become," he said. "I am your warning." The world spun. I grabbed a pillar for support. This isn't possible. Neither is Brother Martin's betrayal, but it will happen tonight anyway. Brother Martin, our chaplain. Check his cell while he's at Vespers. Look under the loose stone by his bed. Find the Sultan's seal before he can use it. Martin would never betray us. He already has. Just as Brother Stephen will during tomorrow's patrol. Just as Brother William will next week when the merchant caravan comes. My head pounded. The storm's roar grew louder. Why are you telling me this? To prevent what happens next. The fall of Jaffa, the massacre of our brothers, the truth about what we guard beneath the fortress. There's nothing beneath the fortress. My other self smiled. A hard, bitter expression. The crypt behind the chapter house. The door that hasn't been opened in a century. The one sealed with 7 locks. How do you know about that? Because I opened it. We'll open it when everything else is lost and there's nowhere else to turn. He reached into his pouch, pulled out 7 keys on an iron ring. These opened the door. In my time, they're stained with the blood of the brothers who died protecting them. In your time, they're still locked in the commander's chest. The chest Brother Martin will try to steal tonight. I took the keys. They felt hot, like they'd been lying in the sun. What's behind the door? The truth about the temple. About what we really guard. About why we're here. The storm peaked. The wind screamed like 1,000 lost souls. Go to Martin's cell, my other self said. Stop him before he can act. Save our brothers. Save Jaffa and the door. Leave it sealed. What's behind it should stay hidden. The price of knowing is too high. What price? He pulled back his robe. His chest was a mass of scar tissue. In the center, branded into the flesh, was a symbol I'd never seen before. The mark of understanding, he said. The sign of those who know too much. The storm began to die. The howling faded. You should go, my other self said. Martin will return from Vespers soon. You'll find the Sultan's seal and letters of betrayal. After that, what? After that, you choose. Stop the traitors. Save our brothers. Keep the door sealed. Or, he touched his scarred chest. Or become me. The storm cleared as suddenly as it had begun. My other self pulled up his hood. Remember the east wall, he said. Remember Martin. Remember the door. Wait, I called. I have more questions, but he was gone. Just empty air where he'd stood. I ran to Martin's cell, found the loose stone, found the seal and letters exactly where my other self had said they would be. That night, we arrested 3 brothers for treason. The next day, we caught 2 more. The east wall was repaired. The fortress secured. Jaffa saved. But sometimes, in the deep night, I hear knocking. 3 sharp raps that cut through any storm. And I remember the keys, still hot in my pocket, still waiting. The door beneath the chapter house remains sealed. For now, but I know what I'll do when the next storm comes. What I'll become when I finally use those keys. The price of knowing is too high, my other self said. But I'm already marked for understanding. I've already chosen to become him. The next storm is coming. The door is waiting. And soon, very soon, another pilgrim will knock on another fortress gate, wearing my face, carrying my warning, bearing the mark of those who know too much. The storm is coming, and I am what I will become. Story 3. The key stuck in the ancient lock. I twisted harder, metal grinding against metal. Behind me, Brother Raymond held the torch higher. The inventory must be complete by sunrise, he said. The Grand Master wants every relic in the crypt catalogued. The lock finally turned. The door groaned open. Stale air washed over us, thick with the smell of old stone and older secrets. I'll return at prime, Raymond said, handing me the torch. God be with you, Brother Thomas. His footsteps echoed. Away up the stairs, leaving me alone in the crypt beneath Tortosa Fortress. The torch revealed rows of shelves carved into the rock. Hundreds of objects clotted them. Chalices, crosses, fragments of bone in golden reliquaries, weapons dark with age. I pulled out my ledger and quill, started at the first shelf. Silver chalice unmarked. I picked it up. The vision hit like a physical blow. I was somewhere else. A chapel in flames, screaming. The chalice in my hands dripped blood. But not my hands, older, scarred, wearing a Templar ring I didn't recognize. The old knight raised the chalice to his lips, drank, died. I dropped the real chalice. It clattered on the stone floor. My hands shook as I picked it up. Just a trick of tired eyes. Too many hours studying dusty manuscripts. I wrote the entry in my ledger, moved to the next item. A crusader's sword, blade notched and pitted. My fingers brushed the hilt. Another vision, a hill of bodies outside Jerusalem's walls. The sword rose and fell, rose and fell. The knight wielding it screamed prayers in Norman French. When he finally fell, the sword was driven through his heart by his own squire. I snatched my hand back. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't normal. This wasn't possible. The next shelf held a simple wooden cross. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to catalog everything. My fingers trembled as they neared it. Maybe this one would be different. It wasn't. A monastery in flames. Vikings swarming the walls. The old priest clutching the cross as axes fell. His blood soaking into the wood. I staggered back, gasping, my torch guttered. "God, protect me," I whispered. "He's not listening down here." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I spun around, torch held high. Empty crypt, just shelves and shadows. Who's there? The owners. The ones who died holding these relics. The ones whose deaths you just witnessed. Movement in the darkness. Shapes forming in the shadows. Knights in ancient armor. Priests in blood-stained robes. All transparent as smoke. All watching me with empty eyes. "This isn't real. As real as the visions," said a knight missing half his face. "As real as what you'll see next." I backed away. My heel hit something. An iron-bound chest I hadn't noticed before. "Open it," the ghosts said in unison. "No, you have to. It's already written. Already happened. Already waiting." My hands moved on their own. Lifted the lid. Inside was a silver medallion on a chain. Simple, unadorned. Somehow, I knew it would fit perfectly around my neck. "Don't," I whispered. But my fingers were already reaching for it. The vision came before I touched it. A future battlefield. A future death. A future me wearing this medallion, dying in ways I couldn't bear to see. I slammed the chest shut. "Why show me this?" "Because it's already done," said the faceless knight. "The medallion is yours now. Has always been yours. Will always be yours. I don't want it. Want doesn't matter. The relics choose their owners. Their deaths. Their fates." More ghosts appeared. Hundreds now, filling the crypt with cold light. "Each object here holds a death," they said. "Each death leads to another. Each fate calls to its chosen bearer. I'm just here to make an inventory." "No, you're here to claim your death. To see how it ends. To understand why it must happen this way." The chest opened itself. The medallion floated up, chain swaying like a snake. "Take it, wear it. See. Everything I won't. You will, you already have. Look at your reflection." I raised the torch, caught a glimpse of myself in a polished shield on the wall. The medallion hung round my neck, cold against my skin, heavy with destiny. I hadn't put it on, hadn't touched it, but there it was. Had always been there, would always be there. The visions came faster now, past and future blending together. I saw every death these relics had witnessed, every fate they had sealed, every choice that was never really a choice. And I saw my own death, clear now. Inevitable. The ghosts pressed closer. Their cold light filled the crypt. "Now you understand," they said. "Now you know why you were chosen. Why these relics exist. Why this crypt guards them. What are they, really?" "Anchors," said the faceless knight. "Points where fate becomes fixed. Where death becomes certain. Where choice becomes destiny." He pointed at the medallion around my neck. "That one has waited centuries for you. For the death it will bring. For the fate it will seal." What fate? The fall of our order. The end of everything we built. The truth finally revealed. My hands shook as I touched the medallion. Cold silver. Smooth and perfect. Perfect as fate. Perfect as death. How long? I asked. Soon, when the king moves against us. When the Pope breaks his word. When the trials begin. The ghosts began to fade. Remember what you saw, they whispered. Remember the deaths. Remember your fate. Wait, I have. More questions, but they were gone. Just empty shadows now. I looked at my ledger. Pages and pages of entries, written in a hand I didn't remember using. Every relic catalogued. Every death recorded. Every fate transcribed, including my own. The medallion hung heavy around my neck. I tried to remove it. It wouldn't come off. Would never come off. Had never been off. The torch sputtered low. Dawn was coming. Brother Raymond would return soon. Would see the medallion. Would understand. Would die. 3 days later, trying to warn the others. I knew this because I'd seen it. Because the relics had shown me. Because fate had already written every death in this story, including mine. The torch went out. In the darkness, the relics whispered their secrets, sang their histories of death, chanted the fate of our order. My fingers found the medallion again, traced its smooth surface, felt the future waiting there, fixed as silver, certain as death. The first light of dawn crept down the stairs. Time to begin what was already written. Time to become what fate had chosen. Time to wear the death I'd been given. The relics watched with eyes of shadow and memory. The crypt held its secrets close, and around my neck the medallion hung like an anchor, like destiny, like truth. Story 4. The foundations of Sidon Fortress held secrets. I found the first one while checking the wine cellars for cracks after the earthquake. A loose stone, a hollow space behind it, and inside, a book. The codex was old. Byzantine work by the Illuminations. The leather binding cracked when I opened it. Gold leaf caught the light of my torch. I should have reported it immediately. Should have taken it to Brother Morris in the library. Instead, I slipped it under my robe and hurried back to my cell. The first page showed our fortress, exact in every detail, down to the arrow slit in the northwest tower that had been filled in just last week. But something was wrong with the image. The longer I looked, the more it seemed to shift. Shadows moved where there should be none. Figures appeared in windows, then vanished. I turned the page. Another illustration of Sidon, but different. Blood ran down the walls. Bodies hung from the battlements. Our brothers fought each other in the courtyard. I slammed the book shut. My hands shook. Beautiful work, isn't it? Brother Morris stood in my doorway. I hadn't heard him approach. I was going to bring it to you. No, you weren't. He entered and closed the door. You were going to read it, going to see what happens next. What do you mean, what happens next? Look at the third page. My fingers moved against my will. Opened the codex again. The illustration showed me, sitting in this cell, with Brother Morris standing. Exactly as he was now. How the codex shows what is, what was, and what will be. Morris sat on my bed. It's been waiting for you. Ever since you joined our order. Waiting for what? To show you the truth. About Sidon, about the temple, about what's coming. I turned another page. The images moved faster now. Battles, betrayals, brothers turning against brothers. This can't be real. As real as the tunnel you'll find tomorrow beneath the chapel. As real as the chamber that lies at its end. As real as the choice you'll have to make. My chest tightened. The air felt too thick to breathe. What choice? Look at the last page. I didn't want to, but my hands kept turning pages, kept showing me more horrors, more deaths, more betrayals. The final illustration filled both pages. Sidon Fortress in flames, a door deep underground, a figure standing before it, me, but older, holding something that burned with golden light. What is this? Your future, your fate, your duty. Morris stood, pulled something from his robe. A key, ancient and black. This opens the tunnel door. You'll need it tomorrow when the time comes. What time? What's going to happen? The codex will show you. Just keep reading, keep watching, keep learning. He placed the key on my desk and walked to the door. Brother Morris, wait. But he was gone. The torch guttered, almost died. When it steadied, the codex had changed. New illustrations filled its pages. New horrors, new truths, I read. All night, couldn't stop. The images pulled me forward, page after page. I saw the betrayal that would split our order. Saw the king who would turn against us. Saw the trials and the burnings to come. But most of all, I saw Sidon. Saw what lay beneath it. Saw what we really guarded here. Dawn came. The cell door opened again. A novice stood there, face pale. Brother Jeffrey, come quickly. They've found something under the chapel. Just as the codex had shown. Just as Maurice had promised. The tunnel waited. The door waited. The choice waited. I lifted the key from my desk. It felt heavy, final. The codex's pages turned on their own, stopping at an image of this moment. Of me, standing here, key in hand. The next page was blank, waiting to be filled, waiting for my choice. I went to the chapel. Brothers crowded around a hole in the floor, where stone slabs had shifted in the earthquake. Steps led down into darkness. Ancient steps. The key burned in my pocket. Clear the chapel, I ordered, by command of Brother Morris. They hesitated. Brother Morris is dead, said the novice. Has been for 3 days. We buried him ourselves. My blood went cold. But I'd seen him, talked to him. He'd given me the key, the codex. I had to check the codex. I ran back to my cell. The book lay open on my desk. The illustration showed Brother Maurice's tomb, showed the day we'd buried him, showed him rising that night, walking the fortress walls, showed him waiting all these years for someone to find the codex, waiting for me. I returned to the chapel, to the tunnel, to the door I knew waited below. The key fit perfectly, had always fit, would always fit. Behind me, brothers gathered, whispered, watched. The codex had shown their faces too, shown what they would do when they learned the truth, shown who would stand with me and who would turn against me, shown the blood that would flow in Sidon's halls before the end. I turned the key, the door opened. The golden light the codex had shown spilled out, painting us all in its radiance. And I finally understood why Brother Morris had chosen me, why the codex had waited, why this moment had been written centuries ago. The brothers behind me gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others drew swords, just as the illustrations had shown, just as it had to be. The choice was made. The fate was sealed. The truth was revealed. And in my cell, the codex wrote our ending in ink and gold and blood. One last illustration on the final page. One last truth waiting to be seen. One last secret buried beneath Sidon Fortress. the door stood open. The light beckoned, and I stepped through, into the future the Codex had promised, into the destiny Brother Morris had prepared me for, into the truth that would destroy us all, just as it was written, just as it had to be, just as it would always be. The Codex never lies, and its final page is still being written, in blood and gold and truth, in choices that were never really choices, in fates that were sealed centuries ago, in Sidon's depths where secrets sleep and wait and write themselves anew. Story 5. 7 days of bread and water, 7 days of silence, 7 days serving the hermit of Mount Carmel. That was my penance for striking a fellow knight during training. The trail up the mountain was steep and narrow. My legs burned from the climb. Sweat soaked my tunic despite the cool morning air. The hermit's cave waited near the summit, a dark mouth in the grey rock. "Enter, Brother Thomas of Acre." The voice came from inside the cave. I hadn't announced myself, hadn't told anyone. My birthplace. The hermit sat cross-legged on a stone ledge. Ancient, skin like weathered leather, eyes that seemed to glow in the cave's dimness. "You're late," he said. "The sin weighs heavy on your shoulders." "What sin?" "Not the blow you struck in anger. The real sin, the one you've carried since Damascus." My mouth went dry. No one knew about Damascus. I'd never told anyone. "How did you?" "No," the hermit smiled. Yellow teeth in the shadows. "I know all your sins, Thomas. The ones you've confessed, the ones you haven't, the ones you will commit. That's not possible. Like it wasn't possible for you to leave those men behind when the Saracens attacked. Like it wasn't possible to hear their screams as you rode away." My legs gave out. I sat hard on the cave floor. No one survived that day. No one could know. I know because you know. Because the guilt eats at your soul. Because their faces haunt your dreams. He was right. Every night I saw them. My brothers abandoned to the enemy. Their accusations, their screams. "Your first task," the hermit said, "fetch water from the spring." He pointed to a clay jar. I took it with shaking hands. The spring was 100 paces down the mountain, clear water bubbling from rock. I filled the jar. When I turned, a figure blocked my path. A knight in blood-stained armor. Brother Michel, who I'd left to die at Damascus. I dropped the jar. It shattered. The figure vanished. "Clumsy," the hermit said when I returned, empty. "Now you must gather the clay and make a new one." Days passed. Each task brought new visions, new accusations, new guilt. Gathering firewood, I saw Brother William hanging from a tree as the Saracens had left him. Sweeping the cave floor, Brother Geoffrey crawled toward me, legs crushed by his fallen horse. Preparing the hermit's meager food, Brother Stephen stared with empty eye sockets, showing me how he died. "Stop this," I begged on the 4th day. "Please. I'm not doing anything." The hermit said, "Your conscience shows you these things. Your guilt makes them real. How do I make them stop? Face them. Speak to them. Tell them the truth you've hidden, even from yourself." That night, they all came. Every brother I'd abandoned. Every soul I'd betrayed. They ringed the cave mouth, glowing with pale fire. "Tell us," they said in unison. "Tell us why you left us." I had no choice. We were outnumbered. Someone had to warn the fortress. "Lies," the hermit said from his ledge. "Tell them the real reason." My mouth formed words I'd never spoken aloud. I was afraid. just afraid. Not for the fortress, not for the mission, for myself. The ghosts pressed closer, and the hermit prompted. And I was tired of fighting. Tired of dying for a cause I didn't believe in anymore. There, the hermit said. Truth at last. The ghosts didn't vanish, didn't forgive, just watched with burning eyes. Is this my penance? I asked. To face them forever? No, this is just the beginning. Now you face what comes next. What comes next? The future, the betrayals yet to come. The brothers you haven't abandoned yet. New figures appeared among the ghosts. Brothers still living. Brothers I served with now. I saw how I would fail them, how I would run again, how fear would drive me to betray everything I'd sworn to protect. No, I said. I won't let that happen. It's already happening, already written, already done. The hermit stood. His shape blurred, shifted. Became my own face, aged and lined with grief. This is what you become, he said, with my voice. This is where your path leads. To this cave, to this penance, to this truth I don't understand. You will, when the time comes, when the choice comes, when you have to decide again between faith and fear. The ghosts swirled closer. Their cold fire filled the cave. 7 days of bread and water, they chanted. 7 days of silence. 7 days of truth. But this is only day 4, I said. Time moves differently here, my older self said. Just as truth moves differently. Just as guilt moves differently. He gestured. The cave mouth showed me scenes from the future. The fall of our order. The betrayals to come. The brothers who would break under torture, denouncing innocent men, and me, running again. Always running, until I couldn't run anymore. Until I came to this cave. Until I became what I saw before me. How do I prevent it? You don't. The hermit wore his own face again. Ancient, knowing. You become it. Become me. Become truth. The ghosts pressed closer, living and dead, past and future, all bearing witness. 7 days, they chanted. 7 sins, 7 truths. I'm not ready, I said. No one is ever ready for truth, the hermit said. That's why it must be forced upon us, like penance, like guilt, like fate. He held out his hand. Take it. Take your future. Take your truth. I reached out. Our fingers touched. The cave exploded with cold fire, with screaming, with truth. When they found me 7 days later, I sat where the hermit had sat, watched with the same ancient eyes, knew with the same bitter knowledge. The brothers who found me saw only a wild-eyed penitent. They didn't see the ghosts that crowded around me, didn't hear their endless accusations, didn't know that I had become what I feared most, what I was always meant to become, the hermit of Mount Carmel, the keeper of guilt, the speaker of truth. Now I wait in my cave, wait for others like me, wait to show them their sins, their futures, their fates. The ghosts keep me company. The guilt keeps me honest. The truth keeps me prisoner. 7 days of bread and water. 7 days of silence. 7 days of becoming. Always 7 days. Always truth. Always waiting. For the next brother who needs to face his guilt. For the next soul who needs to see his future. For the next me who needs to become what he fears most. The mountain keeps its secrets. The cave keeps its prisoners. And I keep the truth forever. Story 6. The first time I saw the manuscript change, I thought I was tired. 3 days in the underground library of Tiberius had left my eyes strained, but I wasn't tired. I wasn't seeing things. The words on the page moved. I am Brother Thomas, a scribe of the Knights Templar. My task was simple. Catalogue the texts in the underground chamber beneath our fortress by the Sea of Galilee. 3 weeks of work, they said. A straightforward assignment. The chamber sat 20 feet below ground. Stone. Steps led down to a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. The air was dry, perfect for preserving scrolls. Shelves lined the walls, packed with manuscripts in Latin, Greek, and Arabic. Clay oil lamps provided light, their flames steady in the still air. I started with the eastern wall. Each morning, I descended the steps at dawn. Each evening, I emerged at sunset. I worked systematically, examining each text, recording its contents, and moving to the next. The task was tedious, but orderly. On the 4th day, I found it. A small scroll, wrapped in plain linen, tucked between 2 larger volumes. The parchment was old, but well preserved. The text was written in Aramaic, which I could read but slowly. I unrolled it carefully on my wooden desk. The first paragraph described a battle. Roman soldiers attacking Jerusalem. Nothing unusual. I made my notes and set it aside for further examination later. When I returned to it that afternoon, the words had changed. The same handwriting, the same ink, but now it described a Muslim army attacking Acre, a battle that hadn't happened yet. My hands shook. I rolled the scroll up and placed it back on the shelf. I spent an hour cataloging other texts, mundane things about agriculture and astronomy. Then I took the scroll down again. The text had changed once more. Now it showed Templars falling at Hattin, a battle I knew was coming. Our commanders were gathering forces to face Saladin. But this manuscript described the battle in detail. The heat, the thirst, the slaughter. I dropped the scroll. It clattered against the stone floor. That night, I couldn't sleep. My small cell felt too warm, too cramped. I paced until dawn, then returned to the library. The scroll waited. This time, it showed something else. Constantinople burning, the city's walls breached. A future yet to come. I spent the next 3 days studying it. Each reading revealed new visions. Cities falling, armies marching, kings rising and dying. Some events I recognized from the past. Others felt foreign, distant, like memories of things that hadn't happened yet. The letters seemed to crawl across the parchment when I watched closely. Black ink shifting like ants, forming new words, new stories. My hands trembled each time I touched it, but I couldn't stop reading. On the 7th day, Brother Michael came to check my progress. I hid the scroll among my personal belongings. He noted my pale face, the dark circles under my eyes, the air. "Down here," I explained. "It's difficult to sleep." He nodded and left. That night, I smuggled the scroll to my cell. I lit a candle and unrolled it again. The text had changed completely. Now it showed events from my own life. My childhood in Normandy. The day I joined the Templars. My first voyage to Outrima. I read until midnight. The words shifted again. Future events began appearing. My future. I saw myself growing older, serving in different Templar fortresses. I saw battles I would fight, wounds I would receive, friends I would lose. The next morning, Brother Michael found me, still reading. The scroll showed something new now. My own death, years in the future, defending a fortress I didn't recognize. I didn't hear him enter. His hand on my shoulder made me jump. "What text is that?" he asked. I rolled it up quickly. "A history," I said. "Nothing important." He frowned. "You look unwell, Brother Thomas. Perhaps some time above ground would help." I nodded, but as soon as he left, I opened the scroll again. The text had changed once more. Now it showed Brother Michael reporting his concerns to the commander. They would come for the scroll. They would take it away. I had to understand it first. I spent the entire day reading, making notes, trying to grasp its pattern. The words kept shifting, showing fragments of past and future. Some events I recognized, others were still to come. The writing style remained consistent, the same careful hand forming the Aramaic letters, a hand that looked increasingly familiar. That night, I examined my own handwriting. I compared it to the scroll. The similarity was unmistakable, but I hadn't written it. I couldn't have written it. I didn't sleep. I read through the night, watching the text change every few hours. More battles, more deaths, the fall of Acre, the arrest of Templars in France, events decades into the future, described in my handwriting. Dawn came. I heard footsteps on the stone stairs. Multiple sets. They were coming for the scroll. I unrolled it one last time. The text had changed again. Now it showed this moment. Me in the library, reading these very words. And then it showed what would happen next, what I would do next. The footsteps grew closer. I read faster. The text described every detail. The sound of boots on stone, the flickering of lamplight, the sweat on my palms. Then it showed more. It showed me understanding, finally, what the scroll was, who had written it. I had written it, not now, not in this life, but I had written it before, in another time, another cycle, and I would write it again. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow. My hands shook as I read the final lines. The door opened. Brother Michael entered with 2 knights. They saw me at the desk. The scroll opened before me. "Brother Thomas," Michael said, "the commander wants to speak with you." I looked down at the scroll one last time. The text had changed again. Now it showed me speaking to the commander, explaining everything. It showed him ordering the scroll, sealed away. It showed another young scribe finding it, years from now. Another version of me, continuing the cycle. I rolled up the parchment carefully. My hands were steady now. I knew what would happen next. I had read it all before, written it all before, lived it all before. I stood and faced Brother Michael. The scroll felt warm in my hands, alive with all its changing words, all its shifting histories, all my shifting histories. "Yes," I said. "I know he does." They escorted me up the stairs. The morning sun hit my face, bright after so many days underground. I squinted against its glare, but I didn't look back at the library. I didn't need to. I knew the scroll's contents now, past, present, and future. They were written in my hand. After all, they always had been. The commander was waiting in his study. A sparse room, just a desk and a few chairs. A cross hung on the wall. He gestured for me to sit. I placed the scroll on his desk. He didn't touch it. Smart man. He'd heard enough from Brother Michael to be cautious. "Explain," he said. So I did. I told him about finding the scroll, about the changing text, about recognizing my own handwriting. I told him about the future events it described, the fall of our fortresses, the betrayals to come, the end of our order. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he reached for the scroll. "No," I said. "Don't open it. You won't understand what you see. It wasn't written for you." He pulled his hand back. "Who was it written for?" "For me," I said. "By me in another time, another life. It will be found again, read again, written again. That's its purpose. That's its cycle." He studied my face. I knew what he saw. The dark circles under my eyes, the pale skin, the look of someone who had seen too much. But he also saw certainty. He saw truth. "The scroll will be sealed away," he said. "No one else should read it." I nodded. I had read this conversation already, seen these decisions made. The scroll would be sealed in a lead box, hidden in a deeper vault. Years would pass. Fortresses would fall. The order would end. But eventually, another young scribe would find it. Another version of me would read it, understand it, and write it again. The commander called for knights to take the scroll away. I watched them wrap it in clean linen, place it in a box, carry it out. I felt lighter once. It was gone, the weight of all those histories, past and future, lifted from my shoulders. "You'll be reassigned," the commander said. "A different fortress, different duties." I nodded again. I knew where I would be sent. I had read it all in the scroll. More battles to come, more defeats, more victories. I would live through them, fight through them, write about them. And someday, in another life, I would write it all down in Aramaic on a scroll and hide it in a library for myself to find. Again, the commander dismissed me. I walked out into the sunlight, blinking against its brightness. The fortress of Tiberias rose around me, solid stone and sharp angles, real, present, for now. I looked toward the Sea of Galilee, its waters glinting in the morning light. Somewhere out there, my future waited. I had read it, but living it would be different. It always was. That's why we kept writing it down, kept passing it on, kept trying to understand. I straightened my robes and walked toward the barracks. There was packing to be done, preparations to make. The scroll had shown me where I needed to go next, what I needed to do next. The cycle would continue. It always did. Story 7. The footsteps on the stairs never change. Left foot, then right. A slight drag on the third step. A pause at the seventh. I've heard them 99 times before. Tonight makes 100. I'm standing at my post in the Tower of David, Jerusalem. The moon is full. The stone beneath my feet is cold. This is my 100th night vigil, and the footsteps are coming again. My name is Gerard de Montfort. 20 years in the Order of the Temple have left their mark. A scar runs down my left arm, my right knee aches in the cold. I've killed more men than I can count. The tower rises 200 feet above Jerusalem. My post is at the top. A narrow platform circles the tower's crown. Arrow slits pierce the walls. The stairs wind up through the center. One way up, one way down. The first hour passes quietly. The city sleeps below. Oil lamps flicker in distant windows. The Mount of Olives is a dark mass against the stars. Normal sounds, normal sights. Then the footsteps start. Left foot, right foot. The slight drag on the third step. I grip my sword hilt. The steps are still far below, but I know the pattern. I've heard it 99 times before. The second hour begins. The footsteps grow louder. They reach the halfway point of the tower. I can hear the breathing now, heavy, labored. A man in armor, climbing slowly. My hands are sweating. I wipe them on my white surcoat. The red cross feels rough under my fingers. I know what's coming. I've known since the first vigil. The footsteps reach the upper section. Closer now. The breathing is clearer. Young man's breathing. Not the wheeze of an old warrior like me. I know whose breath it is. Third hour. The steps are just below now. My heart pounds against my ribs. Sweat runs down my back despite the cold. The breathing gets louder. Left foot, right foot, drag on the third step. I turn toward the stair entrance. Empty darkness, but the steps keep coming. They reach the final turn. One more flight and they'll be here. My sword comes out of its scabbard. Steel scrapes on leather. The footsteps stop. They always stop here. One flight below. The breathing continues, steady and strong. Young man's breathing, waiting. Come up, I say. My voice cracks. Face me. Nothing. Just the breathing. The wait begins. It will last until the 4th hour. It always does. I pace the platform. 10 steps from the stairs to the north wall. 10 steps back. My boots scrape on stone. The breathing follows me. Always just below. Always waiting. 4th hour approaches. The moon crosses behind a cloud. The breathing gets harder. Angry now. I know what's coming. The memory rises like bile in my throat. The steps resume. Faster now. Running. Armor clanking. A young knight charging up the last flight. I raise my sword. The steps reach the top. Nothing emerges. Empty air fills the doorway. But I hear him. Feel him. The young knight I left behind. Raymond de Toulouse. 20 years dead. We were in Antioch. Surrounded by Saracens. The fortress was falling. Raymond and I held the last tower. Just like this one. Steps winding up. One way up, one way down. The enemy broke through below. We heard them coming. Raymond wanted to hold position. I ordered retreat. He refused. Young fool. Brave young fool. I ran, left him there. Heard him fighting below. Heard him die. The breathing fills the platform now. Moving around me. Raymond's breathing, 20 years younger than me. Forever young. Forever dying in that tower. In Antioch. Face me, I say again. Louder this time. End this. The 5th hour begins. The breathing stops in front of me. Cold air hits my face. An invisible sword strikes my blade. Steel rings on steel. I parry automatically. 20 years of training. The invisible blade comes again and again. Fast attacks. Young man's attacks. Raymond was always quick. Sweat freezes on my face. My sword arm trembles. The attacks keep coming. Each blow exactly where Raymond would strike. Each movement familiar. We trained together for 3 years. The 6th hour approaches. My arms grow heavy. The invisible sword never tires. Raymond never tired. That's why he stayed. Why he fought. Why he died. A blow slips through. Cold steel touches my cheek. No blood, no cut, just cold. Raymond's sword. The sword I left behind with his body. I'm sorry, I gasp. The words tear out of my throat. I'm sorry, Raymond. The attacks stop. The breathing moves back. Waiting again. Always waiting. Like Raymond. Waited for help that never came. 7th hour. The moon emerges. The platform glows white. And there he stands. Raymond de Toulouse, 20 years dead, young face, clean surcoat, no blood, no wounds, just standing there. My sword shakes in my hand. Raymond looks at me with clear eyes, young eyes, the same eyes that watched me run, that watched me break my oath. A night never leaves another behind. You know what comes next, Raymond says. His voice is clear, young, you've seen it. Times I nod. My arms drop. The sword point touches stone. Show me. The scene changes. The Tower of David becomes the tower in Antioch. 20 years ago, Raymond and I at our posts. The enemy breaking through below. I watch myself run. Watch Raymond stay. Watch what happened after I left. The door breaking. The rush of warriors. Raymond fighting. Raymond dying. Alone. Enough, I whisper. The scene fades. The Tower of David returns. Raymond still stands there. Young, strong, dead. Why? I ask the question I've asked 99 times before. Why show me this? Because you're still running, Raymond says. Still climbing towers, still standing vigil, still trying to escape. The 8th hour begins. Dawn approaches. Raymond steps closer. His armor doesn't make a sound. His feet don't touch the stone. You could have stayed, he says. We could have held them. Others would have come. The fortress didn't fall for 3 more days. I know this. I've known it for 20 years. 3 days, we could have held 3 days. Help would have come. Raymond knew. That's why he stayed. I was afraid, I say. The truth, finally. 20 years late. I was afraid to die. And now, I look at him. Young face, clear eyes. The night I abandoned. The oath I broke. The coward I've been. Running up towers. Standing vigil. Hiding from my shame. I'm tired of running, I say. Raymond nods. Then it's time. The 9th hour comes. The sky lightens in the east. Raymond turns to the stairs. Choose again, he says. Stay or run. One last time, I hear them coming. Real footsteps this time. Heavy boots on stone. The enemy breaking through, just like Antioch. Just like 20 years ago. My sword feels light now. My arms are steady. Raymond stands beside me, young and strong and dead, waiting for my choice. The footsteps reach the last flight. Armor clanks. Weapons rattle. They're coming, just like before, just like always. I look at Raymond. He nods. We take our positions. 2 Knights of the Temple, brothers in arms. The enemy charges up the stairs. This time, I don't run. The 10th hour never comes. The sun rises over Jerusalem. Brother Martin finds me at my post. My sword is drawn. My surcoat is white. The red cross is clean. Brother Gerard, he calls. Your vigil is over. I look around. The platform is empty. No footsteps on the stairs. No breathing in the shadows. No Raymond. Yes, I say. It's over. I sheathe my sword. My arms are tired. My knee aches. 20 years of weight lift from my shoulders. I leave the tower for the last time. Raymond doesn't follow. He doesn't need to anymore. I've stopped running. 100 vigils. 100 nights. One chance to choose again. To stay. To fight. To keep my oath. I descend the steps slowly. Left foot, right foot. A slight drag on the 3rd step. A pause at the 7th. The footsteps are mine now. They always were. Story 8, Story 8. The coins multiply at midnight. I've counted them 6 times now. Each count shows more than the last. It started with 1,000 gold bezants. Now there are 1,247. I haven't added any coins. No one has entered the vault. The money is breeding in the dark. My name is Hugh de Payens. No relation to the founder, just the same name. I'm a sergeant of the temple, assigned to guard the underground vault in Acre. 20 years of service, most of it spent watching other people's money. Tonight is different. The vault lies 40 feet beneath the Templar compound. Stone walls. Iron-bound door. No windows. 6 oil lamps provide light. The air is cool and dry, perfect for storing treasure. I sit at a wooden table, the coins spread before me. Gold bezants from Damascus, each one weighted and pure. I've been counting money for 2 decades. I know when something is wrong. The first count was at sunset. Standard procedure. A merchant deposited his wealth for safekeeping before traveling to Jerusalem. 1,000 bezants, exactly. I recorded it in the ledger. Sealed the bag. Placed it in the strong box. 2 hours later, I heard clicking sounds from the box, like coins shifting. I opened it, counted again. 1,050 bezants. I checked the seals on the door, untouched. Checked the walls, solid stone, checked the ceiling. No gaps, the coins had multiplied inside a sealed box. Another hour passed, more clicking. Another count, 1,100 bezants. My hands shook as I stacked them. The numbers didn't lie. Money was appearing from nowhere. Now, it's midnight. The latest count sits before me. 1,247 bezants. Each one perfect. Each one identical. Each one impossible. A whisper comes from the coins. Actual words. I lean closer. 30 pieces of silver. The voice is faint, like wind through dead leaves. It speaks in Latin, ancient Latin, church Latin. Another whisper answers, different voice. Blood money. My shirt sticks to my back. Sweat runs down my face. The voices continue. More of them now. Coming. From different coins. Judas paid well. The potter's field. 30 pieces. I know these words. Every Christian knows them. The money paid to Judas. The blood money he returned to the priests. They used it to buy land for burying strangers. More whispers rise from the coins. Different voices. Different languages. Greek, Arabic, Hebrew. Each coin speaks with its own voice. Each tells its own story. The widow's mite, Caesar's tribute, temple tax. The voices grow stronger. The coins shift. On the table, turning themselves, I see faces in the metal. Not the usual stamps of kings and caliphs. Real faces. Human faces. Each coin shows a different one. A young woman counts coins into a temple box. Her face is tired. The coins are small. All she has. A merchant weighs gold in Damascus. His hands are stained with dye. The profit from a lifetime of trade. A soldier pays for bread in Constantinople. Blood stains his sleeve. Money taken from the dead. Each coin holds a memory. Each carries a story. The voices tell them all. Stories of greed. Stories of charity. Stories of life and death bought and sold. My hands are cold. The table feels far away. The voices fill my head. Centuries of transactions. Millennia of exchanges. All the hands that held these coins. All the lives they touched. The temple money changers. 30 pieces of silver. Blood money. More coins appear. They fade into existence like shadows turning solid. The pile grows. Gold bezants, silver dirhams, Roman denarii, Greek drachmas. Every coin that ever carried guilt or grace. The voices get louder. The faces in the metal become clearer. I see them all. The merchants, the widows, the priests, the thieves. Everyone who ever held these coins. Everyone who ever died for them. Hugh de Payans. My own name, spoken by the coins. They know me, counter of treasures, guardian of wealth, keeper of blood money. The faces turn toward me. Thousands of eyes in the metal. All watching, all knowing. They see what I've done. 20 years of service. 20 years of counting other people's money. Taking my share, small amounts. Never enough to notice, but they noticed. Show him, the voices say. The coins move. They form patterns on the table. Numbers, dates, amounts, every coin I've stolen, every piece I've pocketed. 20 years of small sins written in gold. My legs go weak. I grab the table edge. The room spins. The voices continue. All money is blood money. All wealth bears witness. All coins remember. The faces watch me. The merchant from Damascus. His coins were heavy with spice trade profits. I took 10 bezants. The widow from Jerusalem. Her savings for her children's future. I took 2 dirhams. The soldier from Constantinople. Blood money from dead enemies. I took 5 numismata. They all know. They all remember. The coins never forget. More appear. The pile grows higher. 2,000 coins now. 3,000. Each one carrying a face. Each one telling a story. Each one remembering every hand that ever held it. Choose, the voices say. Repent or retain. Return or receive. The meaning is clear. Return what I've stolen or receive more. More coins. More memories. More voices. Until they fill the vault. Until they bury me in centuries of blood money. My hands move. I begin separating coins. The ones I stole. The ones I counted. The ones I guarded. My fingers remember each one. 20 years of greed measured in metal. The voices watch. The faces judge. I stack. The stolen coins. 117 bezants. 43 dirhams. 28 numismata, plus interest. 20 years of interest. Return them. Pay the debt. Balance the scales. I open my strongbox. My personal wealth. Emergency money. Retirement savings. 20 years of stolen coins hidden away. I add them to the pile. The voices quiet. The faces fade. The coins become normal again. Just metal. Just money. No more memories. No more ghosts. I write in the ledger. Record the return. Sign my name. The truth at last. Dawn comes. Brother Walter arrives to relieve me. He sees the ledger, sees the coins, sees my empty strongbox. Brother Hugh, are you well? I look at the coins. Just metal now. Just money. But I know the truth. They remember everything. They always will. Take over the count, I say. I need to speak with the commander. I climb the steps from the vault. The coins don't whisper anymore, but I can still feel them watching. Still feel them remembering. 20 years of service end today. I'll take my vows again. Serve differently. Guard something other than money. The coins taught me that. All money is blood money. All wealth bears witness. All coins remember. The commander will understand, or he won't. It doesn't matter. The coins know the truth. They always have. I leave the vault behind. Leave the coins to their memories. Leave the blood money to its own devices. Let someone else count the ghosts. Story 9. Her face appeared in the chapel window on my first night of penitence. Blue glass, red glass, clear glass between the lead lines. Her features formed in the colored panes like water filling a vessel. I am Brother Stephen of the Temple. I broke my vow of chastity with a merchant's daughter in Antioch. The commander sent me to this monastery for 40 days of penance. Now I kneel before a window that shows me impossible things. The monastery sits on a hill outside Antioch. Stone walls rise 3 stories high. The chapel occupies the eastern wing. Small, austere. 6 wooden pews, an altar of plain marble, windows of colored glass. My cell is bare. A straw pallet, a wooden cross, a view of olive groves. The other monks avoid me. Templars who break their vows are not welcome company. The first night, they locked me in the chapel. Standard punishment. Sunrise to sunrise on my knees. Prayer and contemplation. I knelt before the altar as the sun set. The window above it held simple patterns, geometric shapes, no images, no faces. Moonlight struck the glass, colors shifted. A woman's face formed in the panes, not the merchant's daughter. Different features, older, sadder, beautiful in a way that made my chest hurt. I closed my eyes, counted breaths, opened them again. The face remained. Eyes of blue glass watched me. Lips of red glass moved in silent words. My knees ached on the stone floor. The monks had left a clay cup of water beside me, my only allowance for the night. I reached for it. The water inside showed her face. I dropped the cup. It shattered. The water spread across the floor. Her face rippled in each droplet. Watching, waiting, judging. The night passed slowly. I tried to pray. The words stuck in my throat. The face in the window watched. More features appeared in the glass. A crown of thorns, blood on her brow, a martyr's face, a saint's face. Dawn came. The face faded. Brother Thomas unlocked the chapel door. He saw the broken cup, the water on the floor. "Clean it up," he said, "then return to your cell." I gathered the clay shards, wiped the water with my sleeve, kept my eyes from the window. In daylight, it showed only patterns again, geometry in glass and lead. In my cell, I slept, dreamed of her face, the crown of thorns, the blood, the eyes that knew too much. Second night, back to the chapel. Fresh cup of water, moonlight on glass. Her face formed again, clearer now. I could see every detail. The small scar on her chin, fleck of green in her left eye, the way her mouth turned down at the corners. "Who are you?" I whispered. Her lips moved. No sound came, but I felt her words in my mind. Saint Agnes. I knew the name. Every Christian knew it. The Virgin Martyr, 13 years old when they killed her, refused to marry, refused to surrender her faith, refused to break her vows. My hands shook. Sweat soaked my shirt. The face in the window watched me realize who she was, what she represented. I didn't mean to break my vows, I said. Her expression didn't change. Just watched, just waited. The crown of thorns dripped blood that never fell. Third night, the face appeared as soon as darkness fell. I had spent the day reading about her in the monastery library. Saint Agnes. patron of chastity, defender of vows, martyr for her faith. She was willing, I told the face in the window. The merchant's daughter, she chose me. Agnes watched. Blood ran down her forehead, dropped from the thorns, vanished. Before it hit the glass, we loved each other. No response. Just those eyes. That blood, that crown. Fourth night, I didn't speak. Neither did she. The silence filled the chapel like smoke. My knees were numb on the stone floor. The water in the cup showed her face when I drank. Fifth night, what do you want from me? Her lips moved. Words formed in my mind. Choose. Choose what? Faith or flesh? Vows or desires? Heaven or earth? My hands clenched. It's not that simple. It is always that simple. Sixth night, I argued with her, told her about the merchant's daughter, her smile, her touch, her love. Agnes listened. The blood flowed. The thorns pressed deeper. Love takes many forms, she said. In my mind, I chose wrong. You chose flesh over faith, earth over heaven, self over service. Seventh night, the fever started. My skin burned. My throat was raw. The water tasted of blood when I drank it. Agnes watched from every droplet. You're killing me, I gasped. You're killing yourself, she replied, caught between choices. Eighth night, the fever got worse. I lay on the stone floor. The face in the window multiplied. Every pane of glass held her features. Dozens of Agnes watching. All bleeding, all crowned with thorns. Choose, they said together. I can't, you must. Ninth night, Brother Thomas found me unconscious at dawn. They carried me to the infirmary. Cool cloths on my forehead, herbs in my water. The monks' faces blurred into Agnes. Everyone wore her crown of thorns. 10th night, back in the chapel. The fever broke, but left me weak. Agnes waited in the window, patient, eternal, understanding at last. You went to your death rather than break your vows, I said. Yes, you were only 13. Age doesn't matter. Choice matters. 11th night. I saw the merchant's daughter's face in my mind, felt her touch on my skin. Agnes watched from the window. No judgment now, only witness. I have to choose. You already have. Many times, you. Choose with every breath. 12th night, the fever returned. Worse than before. Fire in my blood. Ice in my bones. Agnes multiplied again. Every window, every drop of water, every reflection showed her face. Choose, they said. Choose now. I choose wrong every time, then choose again. That's why you're here. 13th night, near dawn, the fever peaked. I saw clearly at last. Every choice led here. Every path ended in this chapel. Under these windows, before these faces, before this truth, I choose my vows, I whispered. The fever broke. The faces faded. The windows showed simple patterns again. Geometry in glass and lead. No blood, no thorns, no Agnes. Brother Thomas found me at sunrise. The 40 days are complete, he said. I looked at him. What? You've been here 40 days. Your penance is over. I hadn't counted the nights, hadn't marked the days. Time had blurred in fever and vision. Agnes had taken all 40 nights and compressed them into 13. Or had she? The water cup sat beside me, unbroken, full. I looked into its surface. Just water. No faces, no blood. No choices left to make. "Are you ready to return to your duties?" Brother Thomas asked. I stood. My legs shook. 40 days of kneeling, 13 nights of fever. One choice made at last. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." We walked out of the chapel. I didn't look back at the windows. Didn't need to. Agnes was finished with me. The choice was made. The merchant's daughter would be married by now. Life moved on. Earth turned. Heaven waited. Simple geometry of glass and lead mapped the path between them. I had chosen. Finally, properly. Faith over flesh. Vows over desires. Heaven over earth. Just like Agnes. Just like every saint. Just like every sinner who learned to choose again. The fever never returned. The faces never reappeared. The windows remained windows. Glass and lead and colored light. But sometimes, when I pray, I taste blood in the water. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel thorns press against my brow. Sometimes choices leave marks that even time can't heal. I wear them like a crown. Story 10. They disappear at sunset, one by one, then reappear at dawn with empty eyes and prophecies of death. We started with 40 pilgrims. Now each morning brings them back changed. They know things about the battle that's coming. Things no one should know. I am Brother Godfrey of the Temple. My unit escorts pilgrims to Jerusalem. This group won't make it. None of us will. The ones who return tell us that every morning the desert stretches east toward Hattin. Sand and rock and thorny scrub. Our column moves slowly. 20 Templar knights. 40 pilgrims. Pack animals carrying water and supplies. The July sun burns overhead. The first disappearance happened 3 days ago. An old woman from Provence. She was there at sunset count. Gone at midnight check. No tracks. No signs of struggle. The guards saw nothing. She reappeared at dawn, sitting by the cold fire pit. Her eyes were different, distant. She knew things. "The horns will break first," she said. "Then the center. Then everything burns." I questioned her. She remembered nothing about the night. Didn't know where she'd been. Just kept talking about horns and fire and death. The second night, 3 more vanished. A merchant from Venice, 2 brothers from Normandy. Gone between sunset and midnight. No traces, no sounds. Just empty spaces where people should be. Dawn brought them back. They sat together, speaking in low voices. Their eyes had the same distant look. They knew things too. "The water runs out first," the merchant said. "Then the horses die. Then the men." "Saladin splits his forces," one brother said, "surrounds the hill." "The king's banner falls last," said the other brother. More disappearances the third night. 6 pilgrims, different ages, different origins, all gone in the dark, all back at dawn, all changed. They gathered in small groups, whispering about battles and deaths they hadn't seen yet, describing tactics and movements of armies still miles away, speaking of defeat like it had already happened. My knights grew nervous. They posted extra guards, doubled the patrols, watched the pilgrims with suspicious eyes. Nothing helped. The disappearances continued. 4th night, 10 more vanished. The guards swore they were watching, swore no one could have taken them. But empty beds and vacant fire spots marked their absence. Morning brought them back. They joined the others. Their eyes held the same knowledge, the same certainty. They spoke of specific deaths. Brother Michael falls protecting the true cross. Brother William takes 3 arrows before the end. Brother Godfrey leads the last charge up the hill. My name in their prophecies. My death described in detail. I posted more guards. Ordered the pilgrims tied together. Used ropes to link them to their sleeping spots. It made no difference. They still vanished. The ropes lay empty in the morning. No knots untied. No bonds broken. Just absence where presence should be. 5th night, 15 disappeared. Half. The remaining pilgrims gone between one watch and the next. The knights wanted to abandon them. Return to Jerusalem. Report to the commander. I refused. We had our duty. The pilgrims were our responsibility, even if they came back changed, even if they spoke of things they couldn't know. They returned at dawn, gathered in a large circle, spoke together in many languages, all saying the same things, all describing the same battle, the same defeat. July 4th, they said, the day everything ends. The hill becomes a trap. The cross falls. The king surrenders. The order breaks. I knew the battle was coming. Everyone did. Saladin's forces gathered near Hattin. Our armies moved to meet them. But these pilgrims spoke of details no one could know. Troop movements, tactical decisions, the exact moment everything would go wrong. 6th night, almost all of them vanished. 35 empty spaces in the camp. The remaining 5 huddled together, waiting for their turn. The knights prayed and watched, swords drawn against invisible enemies. Dawn brought them back. They seemed calmer now, more certain. They had accepted what they'd seen, what they knew. It's fixed, they said. It can't be changed. The future is written. We've seen it, we've lived it. We die there. I questioned them again. Demanded answers. Where did they go? What did they see? How did they know these things? They looked at me with those distant eyes. Spoke with voices that had seen the future. We go to the battle, they said. Every night, we watch it happen. Different views, different positions, different deaths. Some nights we're with Saladin's forces, some nights with the king. Sometimes we die quickly, sometimes slowly, but always we die. The last night came. We were close to Hattin now, could see the horns of the hill rising against the sky, the place where everything would end. All 40 pilgrims vanished. The entire camp emptied between one breath and the next. Even the 5 who had resisted before. Gone, no tracks, no signs, no explanation. They returned at first light, stood in a circle around the camp. Their eyes were clear now. Present, they had seen everything they needed to see. Today, they said, it happens today. The battle horns sounded in the distance. Dust clouds rose from Saladin's approaching army. The trap was closing. The pilgrims smiled, not with joy, not with fear, with certainty. You can't change it, they said. We've seen every possibility. Every choice leads here. Every path ends on that hill. It's already happened. It's happening now. It will always happen. I gave the order to form up. The knights moved into position. The pilgrims stood watching. They didn't try to run, didn't try to hide. They knew their places in what was to come. The horns sounded again. Closer now, the sun rose over Hattin, the hill where everything would end. The future the pilgrims had lived every night. The horns break first, they said. Then the center, then everything burns. I raised my sword. The knights formed around me. The pilgrims took their places. all of us moving toward positions they had seen us take 1,000 times before. The battle began exactly as they said it would. The horns broke first, then the center, then everything burned. The future they had lived became the present we all died in. Just like they said it would, just like it always had, just like it always would. The Hill of Hatton claimed us all. Story 11. The first key showed me a murder. When my fingers touched the iron, I saw Brother Martin kill the Grand Master. Poison in his wine. 20 years ago, in this same fortress. The second key revealed worse secrets. Now I hold the third, and my hands won't stop shaking. I am Jean de Villiers, newly appointed to guard the keys of Chateau Blanc. 23 keys in total. Each one opens a different part of the fortress. Each one holds a different memory. Each one shows me something I shouldn't know. The storm rages outside. Lightning flashes through arrow slits. Thunder shakes the stones. I sit at my post in the key room, a small chamber near the top of the main tower. Iron rings hang on iron hooks. 23 keys. 23 secrets. The first key was simple. Large iron opens the main gate. When I touched it during the evening check, the vision hit me like a physical blow. Brother Martin in the Grand Master's chamber, pouring clear liquid into a wine cup. The Grand Master drinking, dying slowly as Martin watched. I dropped the key. It clattered on the stone floor. The vision ended, but the knowledge remained. I had seen truth, hidden truth, a murder everyone thought was natural death. The second key was worse. Small bronze opens the treasury door. Its vision showed me Brother Thomas taking gold from pilgrim donations. Years of theft. Small amounts, building a secret cache in the walls. Now I hold the third key. Iron and bronze mixed. Opens the chapel door. My fingers tremble against the metal. I don't want to see what it holds, but the visions come anyway. Brother William in the chapel, late at night, writing letters to Saladin, drawing maps of our defenses. 20 years of betrayal contained in one piece of metal. Sweat runs down my face. My stomach churns. 3 keys, 3 secrets, 20 more to go. The fourth key brings a different vision. Brother James taking confession from a nobleman, using the information to blackmail him. Gold. Changing hands in dark corridors. Fifth key, Brother Philip breaking his vows with a merchant's wife. Weekly meetings in the storage rooms. More betrayal, more sin. My hands shake harder. The visions burn in my mind. Each key adds new weight. New knowledge I can't unlearn. Sixth key, the weapon master selling information about our arms and armor to Muslim spies. Seventh key, 3 knights planning to desert before a battle. Eighth key, a plot to kill the current Grand Master. Lightning flashes. Thunder cracks. The keys hang on their hooks like iron judges, each one waiting to show me more. Each one holding decades of secrets. I try to resist touching the 9th key. My duty requires a complete check each evening. 23 keys, 23 locks, 23 confirmations that the fortress is secure. The metal feels cold. The vision comes instantly. Brother Robert torturing a prisoner for information. Going too far, hiding the body in the walls. Another secret buried in stone. 10th key, 11th, 12th. The visions blur together. Betrayals, murders, broken vows. Hidden Sins. The true history of Chastel Blanc, written in iron and bronze. My legs give out. I sit on the stone floor. The keys watch me from their hooks. 13 more to check. 13 more secrets to learn. The storm grows stronger. Rain hammers the walls. Wind howls through arrow slits. The perfect night for revelation, for truth, for judgment. 13th key. A night selling Muslim slaves to Christian raiders. 14th key. Poison in the wells during a siege. 15th key. False reports sent to Jerusalem. Each key a new horror. Each touch a new burden. I vomit in the corner. Bile burns my throat. The keys wait patiently. They've held these secrets for decades. They can wait a few more minutes. 16th key. 17th. 18th. More betrayals. More deaths. More sins hidden behind stone walls and iron doors. My hands bleed. The keys cut me as I touch them. Or maybe I grip them too hard. Try to fight the visions that come. It makes no difference. The truth flows like blood. 19th key, 20th, 21st. The weight of knowledge becomes physical. My shoulders bend. My spine curves. 3 decades of hidden history press down on me. The 22nd key shows me something different. Brother Martin, again. The same man who poisoned the Grand Master. Standing in this very room. Holding these same keys. Seeing these same visions. He made a choice. Kept the secrets, added his own murder to their weight. Let the keys hold one more truth. The 23rd key waits. The last one, the smallest. It opens a drawer in the Grand Master's desk. I reach for it with bloody fingers. The vision comes, clear and sharp. I see myself, here now, learning these secrets. Making my choice. Keep the truth hidden. Maintain the order. Let the keys hold their burden, or speak. Reveal it all. Break 3 decades of silence. The storm reaches its peak. Lightning turns. Night to day, thunder shakes the fortress to its foundations. The perfect time for truth, or perfect cover for more lies. Brother Martin made his choice. Now I make mine. I clean my bloody hands, arrange the keys on their hooks. Check each lock like my duty requires. Write in the logbook that all is secure. Then I begin writing letters, 23 of them, 1 for each key, 1 for each secret. The truth preserved in ink instead of iron. The storm dies by morning. The letters leave with the supply wagons, headed for Jerusalem, for Rome, for everywhere truth needs to go. The keys hang on their hooks. Silent now, their secrets released, their burden passed on. Brother Martin's choice was silence. Mine is truth. Let the walls of Chastel Blanc hold different secrets now. Let its keys open different doors. The morning bell rings. My shift ends. I check the keys one last time. They show me nothing. No visions, no secrets. Just metal and rust and duty fulfilled. The weight lifts from my shoulders. Truth has its own cost, but lies weigh more. I lock the key room door, walk down the tower stairs, leave the keys to their silence. Let someone else guard them now. Let someone else learn their secrets. I've learned enough, more than enough. The truth is loose in the world. Flying on paper wings to distant cities, the keys can rest. Their work is done. Story 12. The words bleed when I copy them. Black ink turns red on the page. drop by drop, letter by letter. Each word I transcribe bleeds into the next. The original text remains unchanged. Only my copy shows the truth written in blood. I am Brother Marcus, scribe of the Templar fortress at Tortosa. Saladin's armies surround us. 10,000 men against 300 knights. While they prepare for siege, I copy our sacred texts to save them from destruction. But something is wrong with the words. The scriptorium sits in the highest tower. 3 windows face east, toward the sea, to face west, toward the enemy. I work at a simple wooden desk. Quill, ink, clean parchment. Everything I need to preserve our knowledge. The bleeding started with a simple phrase. In the beginning was the word. Standard text. I've copied it 100 times. But today the ink turned red as it left my quill. Not the red ink we use for illumination. Real red, blood red. My hands shook. I dipped the quill. Again in black ink. Wrote the next line. It bled too. The words formed in blood instead of ink. I checked the original manuscript. Normal black text. Only my copy showed the change. Now all the words bleed. Every letter I transcribe turns red on the page. The blood words form patterns. Hidden messages appear between the lines. Prophecies written in red. The fortress falls at dawn. The walls break from within. 300 knights become 300 corpses. My chest tightens. Sweat stains the parchment. I start a new page. Try to copy a different text. A simple prayer book. The bleeding continues. More prophecies appear. Betrayal comes from the east gate. Gold changes hands in darkness. The commander dies first. I hear siege engines being built outside the walls. Wood creaking. Metal clanking. Men shouting in Arabic. Time runs short. These texts must be preserved, but each copy brings new horrors. The next page reveals names. Knights who will break under torture. Brothers who will convert to save themselves. Exact details of how each man dies. The blood words don't lie. They can't lie. My hands won't stop shaking. Ink spots blur the parchment. No, not ink spots, teardrops. I'm crying as I write. The words keep coming, keep bleeding, keep telling their terrible truth. The treasury empties before the fall. Sacred relics sold for safe passage. 30 pieces of silver paid again. Thunder cracks outside. No, not thunder. Siege engines testing the walls. The fortress shudders. Dust falls from the ceiling. The words continue to bleed. I start another page. Different text, different prophecy. The blood words show me the next month, the next year, the next decade. Everything that follows our fall. Jerusalem surrenders. The order breaks. Kings turn against knights. Fire cleanses all. My stomach heaves. I vomit in the corner. The sour smell mixes with ink and parchment. The words wait patiently. They have more to show me. New page. New horrors. The blood words reveal the end of everything. The complete destruction of the order. Arrests, torture, false confessions, flames. I try to stop copying. Try to put down the quill. My hands keep moving. The words must be preserved, must be written, must bleed their truth onto clean parchment. Grandmaster burns, knights scatter, order dies, truth follows. Steps on the tower stairs. Brother Thomas coming to check my progress. I hide the bloody pages under clean parchment. He looks at my pale face, my shaking hands. Are you ill, Brother Marcus. I shake my head, can't speak. The words want to bleed from my mouth too, want to tell him everything I've seen. He leaves. I uncover the pages. The blood words glow in the fading light. More prophecies, more deaths, more endings written in red. Night falls. Torches light the enemy camp. 10,000 fires surround us. I keep writing, keep copying, keep watching the words bleed. New page, new truths. The blood words show me. Specific deaths. Brother Thomas falls, defending the gate. Brother William dies in the treasury. Brother Michael burns in the chapel. My own death appears. Arrow through the throat, quick, clean, better than most. The blood words offer small mercies sometimes. Dawn approaches. The eastern windows show faint light. The western windows show siege engines ready. The prophecies were clear. The fortress falls at dawn. I make my final copies, hand shaking, tears falling. The words bleed faster now. Urgent, desperate. Last truths that must be told. Remember us. Learn from us. Don't repeat us. The first siege engine strikes the wall. Stone cracks. The fortress shudders. I keep writing, keep bleeding the words onto the page. More impacts, louder cracks. The tower sways. Dust clouds fill the scriptorium. The words don't stop, won't stop until their truth is told. Brother Thomas runs past my door. 2 arms, they've breached the east gate, just as the blood words said. Betrayal from the east, gold changing hands in darkness. The beginning of the end. I gather the pages, normal copies in one pile, bloody prophecies in another. The first pile goes in the evacuation chest. Official records, clean history. The second pile I keep. Blood words need blood protection. They'll stay with me until my arrow finds its mark. Sword clashing below, screams, running feet. Smoke rising. The fortress dies, just as predicted. 300 knights becoming 300 corpses. I take my place at the window, bow ready. Arrow knocked. The blood words showed me which shot to take, which enemy to aim for. One last task before my own ending. The arrow flies, strikes true. A commander falls. Small victory in a larger defeat. The blood words granted me that much. Second arrow now, not mine, theirs. Coming from my throat. The prophecy completes itself. The pages scatter as I fall. Blood words mix with blood reality. Truth written and truth lived becoming one. The fortress falls. The order breaks. The truth bleeds. Just as the words said it would. Just as it always had to be. Let someone find these pages. Let them read the blood words. Let them know how it ended. How it all ended. In blood and truth and prophecy fulfilled. The scribe's last copy completed in his own red ink. The perfect words. The final truth. Written in blood. Story 13. The voices started when I touched the reliquary. My sister's voice first. She's been dead for 12 years. Then my father's voice. Dead for 20 years. Then my mother's. Each voice telling me how they really died. Each truth worse than what I believed. I am Brother Roland, guardian of the temple's relics entire. Tonight I must move our most sacred item to a new vault. A simple bronze box, small enough to carry in 2 hands. Inside, a fragment of the true cross. At least, that's what we tell the pilgrims. The port of Tyre sits dark tonight. No moon, no stars. Perfect for moving precious things. I stand in the old vault beneath the temple church. Stone walls, iron door, one torch burning. The reliquary waits on a marble shelf. My hands shake as I reach for it. The metal feels warm. Wrong, bronze shouldn't be warm in this cold vault. I lift it carefully. The first voice comes immediately. Roland, my sister Marie's voice. Clear as life. Let me tell you how I died. The box nearly slips from my grip. My breath catches. Sweat breaks out on my forehead. Marie died of fever in France. A simple death. A clean death. No fever, her voice says from the box. Poison, your friend Pierre. He wanted my land. Slipped nightshade into my wine. Watched me die slowly. Claimed my estate through an old debt. My hands clench on the bronze. The metal grows warmer. Marie's voice continues, telling details only she would know. The taste of the wine, the color of the cup, the way. Pierre smiled as she drank. A second voice joins hers. My father, let me tell you my death, son. He died in battle. An honorable death. A knight's death. That's what they told me. Murdered in my sleep, his voice says. By my own squire. Stefan wanted my sword, my armor, my place in the Baron's guard. Knife across my throat while I dreamed. Quick, silent, unknightly. The reliquary burns my palms now. I can't let go. The voices hold me. Force me to listen. Force me to learn the truth. My mother's voice comes next. She died in childbirth. A common end. A natural death. The midwife killed me, she says. Deliberately, she hated our family. Used wrong herbs. Caused bleeding. Watched me die while pretending to help. The baby died too. Your brother, you never knew him. 3 voices, 3 deaths, 3 truths hidden for decades. The reliquary pulses with warmth. More voices wait inside, more truths to tell. I start walking. The vault door lies open. A clear path to the new storage place. Just cross the church, down the stairs. Simple task, but the voices won't stay silent. Uncle Robert speaks next. Lost at sea, they said. Drowned in a storm. Your cousin James hired pirates, his voice tells me. Wanted my merchant fleet. Paid them in gold to sink my ship. I saw his seal on their orders before they threw me overboard. Each step brings new voices, new deaths, new horrors. Family members, friends, everyone I've lost speaks from the bronze box. Each death worse than I knew. Each truth more terrible than the lies I believed. The church is empty. Moonlight through stained glass makes colored patterns on the floor. The reliquary burns in my hands. The voices grow louder. Aunt Margaret, Brother Thomas, Cousin William. Each death revealed as murder, betrayal, secret violence hidden behind comfortable lies. Let me tell you how I died. Listen to the truth. Hear what they did to us. My arms ache. The box feels heavier with each voice. Each revelation adds weight. Physical weight. The burden of truth crushing down. Halfway across the church, the new vault waits below. 20 more steps. The voices don't care. They have more to tell. My childhood friend Philip speaks. Found dead in the river. Accident, they claimed. Your brother Louis killed me, he says. Caught me with his wife. Beat me to death. Threw my body in the water. You praised him at my funeral. Called him a loyal friend. The truth hits like a physical blow. Louis died last year. fever, they said. Natural causes. Poison, his voice joins the chorus. His wife's revenge. Slow death, painful. I deserved it. More voices, more deaths. The box burns hotter, heavier. My arms tremble with its weight. Sweat soaks my robe. The voices won't stop. Friends from childhood, fellow knights, servants and nobles. Everyone I've known who died. Everyone whose death I mourned. Each one revealing the brutal truth behind comfortable lies. The stairs to the new vault appear ahead. Dark opening in the floor, 10 steps down. The voices reach a crescendo. Hear us, know us, remember how we really died. My legs shake. The box weighs as much as a man now. Each voice adds more weight, more heat, more truth. 5 steps to the stairs. The voices change tone, start telling new truths, not about death, about life, about sins and secrets hidden behind respectable faces. My father's infidelity, my mother's jealousy, my sister's forbidden love, my brother's crimes, every dark secret they carried to their graves spills out in their own voices. 3 steps. My arms feel ready to break. The box burns like hot iron. The voices layer over each other. Death and sin and secret shame pouring out in a torrent of truth. 1 step. My foot finds the first stair. The voices suddenly quiet. All speaking together now. All telling the same truth. The reliquary isn't what we tell pilgrims. No fragment of the true cross. Something older, darker. A bronze box that holds death's voices. That forces truth from lying lips, that makes the dead speak their hidden shames. The steps are slick with my sweat. Each downward motion an agony. The box pulls at my arms like it wants to drag me down. The voices whisper the artifact's true history, found in a tomb in Jerusalem, kept by the temple in secret, passed from guardian to guardian, each one learning the truth about death, about lies, about the weight of hidden things. The new vault appears below. Small room, stone walls, iron door, marble shelf waiting for its burden. 3 more steps. The voices rise again. 1 last truth to tell. The box's final secret, its real purpose. 2 steps. My arms shake uncontrollably. The voices speak in perfect unison. Now tell us how you'll die, Brother Roland. The last step, the box pulls down. My arms give way. Bronze strikes stone. The lid cracks open. Light pours out. Voices become visible. Faces form in the glow. Everyone I've lost. Everyone whose death I mourned. Everyone whose truth I just learned. They reach for me with hands made of light and voice, ready to add my truth to their chorus, ready to make me part of their testimony. I see my death in their touch, feel it in their grip, know it in their voices. The reliquary takes what it reveals, claims those who hear its truths, adds their voices to its chorus. The light fills the vault. The voices fill my ears. The truth fills my mind. I know how I'll die now. Know what voice I'll add to the box. Know what truth I'll tell the next guardian. The reliquary claims its price. The voices welcome me home. The truth sets me free. Into death, into light, into voice. Story 14. The clouds show me how we die. Each one that passes over the fortress carries a different vision, different battles, different defeats. I've watched Seift fall 100 times tonight. In an hour, I'll watch it fall again. I am Brother Jacques, newly initiated into the Knights Templar. This is my first solo watch on the walls of Saft. 6 hours from midnight to dawn. The clouds started showing me visions at the first bell. Now I can't stop seeing what's coming. The fortress sits high. On its hill, walls rise 60 feet above bare rock. 3 rings of defense, 7 towers. My post is on the highest rampart, western wall. A clear view of the valley below. A clear view of the clouds above. The first vision came in a small cloud, barely larger than the moon. It drifted over the southern tower. Showed me a battle 5 years from now. Muslim forces breaching the outer wall. Knights falling back in good order. Blood on white stones. Fire in the night. I gripped my spear tighter. Tried to look away. The clouds didn't care. Another one came. Bigger, darker, 10 years forward. The middle wall falling. Trebuchet stones smashing towers. More knights dying, more fires burning. My hands started shaking. Sweat froze on my face in the cold air. The clouds kept coming, kept showing, kept killing us all in different ways. 15 years. The inner wall holds, but disease spreads inside. Knights coughing blood, water running low. Surrender or die slowly. 20 years. Betrayal from within. Gates opening in the night. Silent killers in the dark. No chance to fight, no chance to resist. 25 years. Siege engines like mountains. New weapons that throw Greek fire. Walls melting. Men burning. Stone turning to slag. I tried closing my eyes. The visions played on my eyelids. Tried turning away. The clouds followed, each one showing a new death, a new defeat, a new end for Saft. The second bell rang. 5 hours left in my watch. The clouds gathered thicker, eager to show me more, hungry to share their knowledge of doom. 30 years, a massive army, tens of thousands. No hope of relief. Fighting to the last man. Dying with honor, at least. 35 years. Treachery in the ranks. Poison in the wells. Knights turning on knights. The fortress destroying itself. 40 years. New siege machines. Giant crossbows that throw spears the size of trees. Walls punctured like paper. Defenses useless. Technology defeating valor. My legs shook. I leaned on the wall to stay. Standing, the visions kept coming. Each cloud bringing a new nightmare. A new way for everything to end. Brother Thomas passed on his patrol. Saw my pale face. My trembling hands. First watch is always hard, he said. It gets easier. He couldn't see what I saw. Didn't know I was watching him die in a dozen different futures. Arrow through the throat in one. Sword in the gut in another. Burning alive in a third. The clouds showed me everyone's death. Every knight. Every sergeant. Every servant. All dying in different ways, as Saft fell again and again. Third bell, 4 hours left. The clouds turned red, with reflected fire from the valley. Shepherds' campfires below. Warning beacons above. Each flame making the visions stronger. 45 years. The fortress starved out. No supplies getting through. Eating horses first, then rats, then each other. 50 years. A new sultan with new weapons. Strange tubes that threw metal balls. Walls crumbling under impossible impacts. The future bringing deaths we couldn't even understand. 55 years. Plague inside. Enemies outside. Choosing how to die, but death coming regardless. My teeth chattered. Not from cold, from fear, from certainty. The clouds showed truth, showed what had to be, showed what would be. I saw myself in the visions now, older each time, grey in my beard, scars on my face, fighting and dying in different years, different ways, different defeats. Brother Thomas passed again. I was watching him die in a sandstorm 20 years from now, choking on grit, skin peeling off. "You should drink some water," he said. "You look unwell." I nodded, couldn't speak. The clouds were showing me his real death now, 3 years away, falling from this very wall during another night watch. Simple, quick, almost merciful. 4th bell. 3 hours until dawn. The clouds covered the whole sky now. An audience of visions, each one wanting to show me its own version of our end. 60 years, the fortress undermined, tunnels beneath the walls, the ground falling away, everything we built coming down. 65 years, a hidden army approaching in fog. No warning, no chance to prepare. Death coming silent and quick. 70 years, the longest vision. The last nights of safety. Old men in dented armor, finally overwhelmed by sheer numbers. At least we lasted that long in one future. My legs gave out. I sat on the cold stone, looked up at the clouds. They had more to show me, always more. I saw every possible end, every way we could fall, every death we could die. The clouds were thorough in their visions, complete in their prophecy. 5th bell, 2 hours left. The visions began combining. Multiple futures layered together, multiple defeats happening at once. Fire and plague, treachery and starvation, quick deaths and slow deaths, all possible, all true, all waiting in different clouds. Brother Thomas made his last pass. I watched him die 7 different deaths in 7 different years. The clouds were merciless in their showing. "Almost over," he said. "Dawn comes soon." But dawn wouldn't stop the visions, wouldn't stop the truth. The clouds had shown me that too. This was only the beginning. Every watch would bring new clouds, new visions, new deaths to witness. Every night until the real end came. Until one of those futures became present. 6th bell. 1 hour until dawn. The clouds showed me something new, something worse. I saw myself as an old knight, last defender of the highest tower, looking up at clouds just like these, seeing visions just like these, understanding at last. The clouds didn't just show the future, they showed all possible futures, all possible ends. And by showing them, they made them real, made them happen. We would try to prevent each doom they showed, try to avoid each defeat they revealed. But in trying, we would cause other ends, other deaths, other falls. The clouds weren't prophecies, they were traps. Each vision we avoided leading to another. We couldn't see, each death we prevented bringing a worse one. Dawn approached. The clouds began to fade. Their visions grew weaker. But I had seen enough, understood enough. Safe would fall, had to fall. The only choice was how, when, which cloud's vision would become reality. Brother Thomas came for the changing of the watch, still alive, still whole, still ignorant of his 3 years. Anything to report. I looked at the last clouds. They showed me one final truth, one last choice. Report. The visions, share the knowledge. Let everyone try to fight the futures I had seen, or keep silent. Let fate choose its own cloud, its own end. Nothing to report, I said. Just clouds. He nodded. Took my post. Looked up at the fading visions without seeing them. I descended the wall steps. My legs still shook. My hands still trembled. The weight of futures pressed down on my shoulders. The clouds would come again tonight. Show more visions, more deaths, more ends. I would watch them all. Learn them all. Keep them all secret. Let safety fall as it would fall. Let us die as we would die. The clouds had shown me that too. My last vision, my last death. Keeping this secret until the end. Story 15. The dying merchant brought 40 golden bezants. Standard deposit. Nothing unusual. Until the coins started whispering the truth about Templar wealth. How we really gained our fortune. What it cost in blood and souls. I am Brother Laurent, treasurer of the temple in Cyprus. 20 years managing other people's money. Today, that money decided to talk back. The merchant arrived at sunset. Elderly man, well-dressed, fever in his eyes. Shaking hands, held a leather purse. His servant helped him into my counting room. I need to make a deposit, he said, voice weak, trembling, before it's too late. Standard procedure. Many men deposit their wealth before death. The temple keeps it safe, takes a percentage, delivers the rest to the designated heirs. Simple banking. I opened my ledger, dipped my quill. Your name, Ibrahim of Alexandria. The servant poured the coins on my table. 40 bezants, pure gold. Each one perfect. Each one hungry to tell its story. The first coin spoke as. Soon as I touched it, clear voice in my head, male, young, speaking Arabic. They killed me for this coin. Templar knights ambushed my caravan, took everything, called it God's work. My hand jerked back. The coin rolled across the table. The voice followed. 20 years ago, desert road to Jerusalem. 4 knights in white, soared through my heart. This coin was my bride price. Never delivered. Ibrahim coughed, blood on his lips. Count them, please. Make sure they're all there. I reached for another coin, different voice. Female this time, old. Speaking Greek, my life savings, given to the temple for safekeeping. They said I died of fever, actually poison. They kept everything. No heirs to claim it. Sweat broke out on my forehead. My hands shook. Each coin carried a different voice, a different death, a different truth about how the temple built its wealth. Third coin, man speaking Latin. Pilgrim's donation, forced donation. Give or die on the road. No protection without payment. Fourth coin, young woman, Aramaic, widow's mite. Last money for my children. The temple took it as tax, called it God's due. Ibrahim wheezed. Is something wrong? I shook my head, couldn't speak. The voices kept coming, each coin telling its story, its journey from living hands to temple vaults. Fifth coin, sixth, seventh, more deaths, more theft, more God's work that was just greed in white cloaks with red crosses. The merchant's eyes closed, his breathing slowed. The servant watched anxiously. The coins wouldn't stop talking. Battlefield loot, stripped from corpses. Protection money from Jewish merchants, stolen from Muslim tombs. My ledger remained blank. 40 coins, 40 voices, 40 brutal truths about Templar banking. Ibrahim stirred. The receipt my heirs will need. Yes, Of course. My quill shook over the parchment. The coins spoke louder. Caravan raid profits, blackmail payments, blood money from betrayal. The merchant coughed again. More. Blood. The servant supported his head. The coins told more stories. Hidden accounts. Secret transfers. Money moved in darkness. Gold paid for silence. Silver bought loyalty. Copper purchased death. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 20 years handling temple money. 20 years never questioning its source. Now every coin spoke its truth. Sign the receipt, Ibrahim whispered. Please. Before. I forced my hand to move, wrote his name. The amount, my official mark. Standard document. The coins. Mocked each word. More blood contracts. More death receipts. More greed blessed by God. The merchant's eyes closed again. His breathing rattled. The servant began praying quietly. The coins showed no mercy. They revealed everything. Every dark transaction. Every hidden deal. Every cruel exchange that built the temple's fortune. Knights stealing from pilgrims they swore to protect. Bankers cheating widows they promised to help. Holy men taking blood money and calling it divine will. Ibrahim stopped breathing. The servant wailed softly. The coins kept speaking. 20 years of banking secrets poured into my mind. Names, dates, amounts. Every shadowed corner of temple finance illuminated by harsh truth. The servant shook the merchant. No response, no breath, no pulse. Just silence and coins talking of death. What about his body? I asked. Had to say something. Had to hear a human voice. He has family in the city. I'll send for them. The servant left. I sat alone with 40 talking. Coins and a dead man. The voices grew louder. They showed me my own role. Every transaction I'd approved. Every questionable deposit I'd accepted. Every dark deal I'd recorded in clean numbers. My hands pressed against my ears. Useless. The voices spoke inside my head. Inside my guilt. Inside my complicity. You knew, they said. You all knew. You just didn't want to hear. 20 years of willful ignorance stripped away. 20 years of God's work revealed as theft and murder and greed. Merchant's body cooled on my floor. The coins told me how many other bodies had paid for temple wealth. How many deaths had filled our vaults. I reached for the coins. Had to stop them. Had to silence them. Had to hide the truth again. They burned my fingers. Physical pain. Real heat. The voices rose to screaming. No more hiding. No more silence. No more lies. My hands blistered. The voices filled my skull. The truth couldn't be buried again. Couldn't be hidden. Couldn't be denied. Yanked open my strongbox. 20 years of personal wealth. My percentage of blood money. My share of sacred theft. The coins inside started talking to every piece I'd ever earned, speaking its truth. Every profit showing its real cost. The voices built to a chorus. Hundreds of coins. Hundreds of deaths. Hundreds of brutal truths about temple banking. I clawed at my ledger. Tried to tear out pages. Hide numbers. Bury evidence. The coins wouldn't allow it. Face it, they said. Face us. Face us. What you've done, my hands bled on the parchment. The voices filled the room. The truth crushed down like physical weight. I had a choice. Keep the system running. Keep the secrets hidden. Keep the wealth flowing, or end it. Reveal everything. Let the truth speak. The coins made the choice for me. Their voices became my voice. Their truth became my truth. Their stories poured out of my mouth. I started writing, not receipts now, not ledger entries, real accounts, real numbers, real costs of temple banking. The servant returned with the merchant's family, found me still writing, still speaking coin truth, still revealing 20 years of sacred crime. They took Ibrahim's body, left his 40 coins, left me writing, left the truth flowing out like blood from a wound. I wrote all night, all the next day, all the next night. The coins kept talking, I kept recording. Everything exposed, everything revealed, everything spoken at last. The temple's wealth had its say, the dead had their voices heard. The truth broke free of its golden chains. Let them call it madness, let them call it betrayal, let them call it what they will. The coins called it justice. That's what I'll call it too. When they find these pages, when they hear these voices, when they face this truth, God's work revealed at last, in the voice of gold, in the testimony of the dead, in the confession of a banker who finally listened to his coins. Story 16. I wasn't ready for night watch duty. They all knew it. I had only taken my vows 3 weeks ago. But Brother Commander Gerard insisted every new Templar must face their first vigil alone. That's how it had always been done at Chateau. The fortress rose straight from the Mediterranean coast, its walls 100 feet high. My post was the highest tower on the western wall. From there, I could see the moon reflecting off the sea to my left, and the endless expanse of Muslim territory to my right. The year was 1218, and this stretch of coastline was the only thing standing between the Saracens and the Christian kingdoms. The senior guards helped me into my chainmail. It felt heavier than during training. Brother Thomas handed me my sword, shield, and the watch horn. His eyes looked concerned, but he said nothing. The rules were clear. No speaking once night watch began. I climbed the narrow stone steps in the darkness. My mail clinked against the walls. At the top, wind hit my face. The tower platform was small, just 10 feet across. A crenellated wall came up to my chest. Beyond it, darkness. The first hour passed slowly. I paced the platform, checking each direction every few minutes as we were trained. The moon cast strange shadows on the walls below. But I kept my eyes on the horizon, watching for signal fires or torches that might warn of an approaching army. That's when I heard it. A voice barely louder than the wind, chanting in Latin. I recognized the words from morning mass. Miserere me Deus, secundum, magnum misericordiam, to whom? Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. I gripped my sword hilt. The chanting came from the walkway below, but when I looked down, no one was there. Just moonlight on stone. The voice faded. My heart pounded. I told myself it was just the wind. We'd been warned about this. How the mind plays tricks during the long night watches. I resumed my pacing. The chanting started again. Closer now. Multiple voices. Still quiet but clear. Et secundum. Multitudinum. Miserationem. Tuarem. Dalen Gitatain. Male. And according to the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. I drew my sword. The blade scraped against the scabbard, impossibly loud in the night. Who goes there? I called out. Show yourself. No response. Just the continuing chant, drifting up from the empty walls. I wanted to blow the horn to summon help. but false alarms meant punishment. 20. Lashes at minimum. I had to be sure. The voices grew louder. They were singing about sin now, about guilt. Amplius lover me, ab iniquitate me. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity. My hands shook. I knew that verse. It was about the sin I had committed 2 months ago, before joining the order. The sin I had confessed to no one. I had stolen bread from a blind beggar in Acre. He had reached out his bowl to me, and instead of giving alms, I took what little he had. I told myself I was hungry, that I would pay him back someday. I never did. The chanting changed. Panem telit akaiko, he took bread from the blind man. My sword clattered to the stone floor. Those words weren't from any psalm. The voices knew. Somehow they knew. I forced myself to look over the wall again. The moonlight showed every detail of the empty walkway below. No shadows where someone could hide. But the chanting continued, louder now, from all around me. More verses about my sins. The time I lied to my dying mother, the prayers I had skipped, the envy I felt toward Brother Marcus, who had received the post I wanted. I sank to my knees, pressing my hands against my ears. It didn't help. The voices seemed to come from inside my head now. Dawn was hours away. I couldn't leave my post. Desertion meant death. I picked up my sword with trembling hands and resumed my watch, trying to focus on the horizon. The voices followed my every move. They knew everything. Every dark thought, every hidden deed. Things I had tried to forget. Things I had never told another soul. Near midnight, the chanting changed again. Now they sang of other sins, murders, betrayals, blasphemies, far worse than my petty crimes. The voices grew harsh, guttural, less like monks, more like things that had forgotten how to be human. I recognized some of the names they sang about. Old Templars, from when the fortress was first built. Brother Gigam, who had sold secrets to the Saracens. Brother Richard, who had worshipped pagan idols in the crypt. Each verse ended with how they died. Hanging, burning, burial, alive. My teeth chattered despite the warm night. The voices were all around now, a chorus of the damned. They sang of darkness and judgment, of souls crying out for mercy and finding none. A parchment blew across the platform, carried by the wind. I snatched it before it could fly away. In the moonlight, I could just make out the faded Latin text. It was a court record from the fortress archives. Dated exactly 100 years ago. My hands shook as I read. 5 Templar brothers, convicted of heresy and devil worship. They had been walled up alive in the very tower where I stood. The document listed their names. They were the same names being chanted now. The voices reached a crescendo. I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me, slow and dragging. The sound of chains being pulled across stone. I turned, sword raised. The stairway was dark, but something was moving in the shadows. Multiple somethings, climbing with a horrible patience. The first figure emerged into the moonlight. It wore the white mantle of a Templar, now grey with age and rot. Where its face should have been, there was only darkness. It raised a skeletal hand and pointed at me. The others followed, 5 in all. Their mantles were torn and stained with old blood. They moved stiffly, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. The empty hoods turned toward me. They formed a circle, surrounding me. There, chanting filled the air, drowning out everything else. The words were no longer about my sins. Now they sang of what was to come. of judgments and punishments, of an eternity spent in this tower, watching and waiting. I backed away until I hit the wall. Below me, the sea crashed against the rocks. The figures moved closer, their bony hands reaching for me. The horn, I had to sound the alarm. My fingers fumbled with the horn at my belt. But before I could raise it to my lips, the nearest figure grabbed my wrist. Its touch was like ice. The chanting stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard words spoken directly into my mind. "Welcome to the vigil, brother. It is eternal." I screamed then. Screamed until my throat was raw. The morning patrol found me unconscious on the platform, the horn still clutched in my hand. I tried to tell them what had happened, about the voices, the figures, the 100-year-old document. But there was no parchment to be found. The archives had no record of 5 heretics walled up in the tower. Brother Commander Gerard listened to my tale in silence. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Every tower in this fortress has its ghosts," he said. "Every stone remembers. That is why we pose the new brothers there. To learn that some sins cannot be hidden, some judgments cannot be escaped." They gave me a new assignment after that, away from the tower. But sometimes at night, I still hear the chanting, and I know they are up there, waiting. 5 empty mantles in the moonlight, keeping their endless vigil. The tower still stands today, they tell me, still watching over the sea. And on quiet nights, when the wind is right, they say you can hear Latin prayers drifting down from its heights. 6 voices now, not 5. I know I will join them someday. We all carry sins that must be answered for. The only question is when our judgment comes. Until then, I serve, and I wait. And I remember that first night when I learned that no sin stays hidden forever. That walls remember, the stones remember, and in the highest tower of Chateau, the vigil continues. Story 17. The manuscript arrived at dawn, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with the Grand Master's mark. I found it on my desk in the scriptorium beneath the Temple Mount, where I worked as a Templar scribe. The year was 1187, and Jerusalem was under siege. Every day we could hear Saladin's armies testing our walls. Brother Raymond placed the package on my desk himself. His hands shook as he broke the seal. "This was found in the lower crypts," he said. "The Grand Master wants it translated by tomorrow. Only you can work on it. Tell no one what you read." The parchment was old, the kind we hadn't used in a century. The Latin text showed signs of water damage, but was still legible. I laid out my inkwell and quills, ready to begin my work. The first paragraph seemed simple enough, a description of the Temple Mount's foundation stones. I began to translate, speaking each word under my breath as I wrote. Something moved in the corner of my vision. I looked up, but I was alone in the scriptorium. The morning sun lit the dust motes in the air. Nothing else moved. I returned to my work. The next section described buried chambers beneath the temple. This wasn't unusual. We knew there were many unexplored rooms down there. But as I translated, the words seemed to shift on the page. I blinked hard. Where I had just read ancient stones, the text now read waiting darkness. I looked again, and it was back to ancient stones. My quill scratched across the parchment as I copied. The text, the sound echoed strangely in the empty room. Each word I wrote felt heavier than the last. The manuscript began describing a sealed chamber discovered during the First Crusade. The Latin was precise, giving measurements and directions. If these were accurate, the chamber lay directly beneath where I sat. I wiped sweat from my forehead. The room had grown cold, despite the summer heat outside. My hands trembled as I dipped my quill again. The next passage made me stop. It named Brother Michel, a fellow scribe who had died last week from fever. But this manuscript was decades old. I read it again. Now the name was Brother Augustus, who had served here 80 years ago. My chest felt tight. I stood up and paced the room, trying to clear my head. When I returned to my desk, the text had changed again. Now it described Brother Michel's death in detail. Details only I knew because I had been with him at the end. The words moved when I wasn't looking directly at them. Rearranged themselves into new sentences, new meanings. Each time I looked back, they told a different story. I had to continue. The Grand Master was waiting. I forced myself to focus only on the current line, ignoring what I had already translated or what came next. The manuscript spoke of secrets hidden in the temple's foundations, sacred objects buried by Solomon himself. But between these descriptions, other words appeared. Words about me, about things I had done, things I had thought no one knew. My hands shook so badly I spilled ink across the page. When I wiped it away, the spill had formed words in perfect Latin script. Continue reading, Brother Thomas. Your truth awaits. I hadn't told anyone my name. It wasn't written anywhere in the scriptorium. The text grew darker, harder to read. Each sentence contained hidden meanings, prophecies. I saw names of brothers who hadn't been born yet, battles that hadn't been fought, deaths that hadn't happened. Then I saw my own name again. The manuscript described my childhood in Normandy, the time I pushed my brother into a well, how I had lied about it for years, how he had never been found. I stumbled away from the desk. The words followed me, appearing on the walls, on my hands, everywhere I looked. They knew everything, every secret, every sin. Brother Raymond returned at midday. He found me pressed into a corner, eyes closed, mumbling prayers. The translation, he demanded. Is it finished? I pointed to my desk. The pages I had translated were blank. The original manuscript had vanished. Raymond grabbed my arm. The Grand Master is waiting. Where is it? My teeth chattered. It's still there, I said. The words, can't you see them? They're everywhere. He squinted at the empty desk. There's nothing there, brother. Nothing at all. But I could still see them. Lines of text crawling across every surface. They described what would happen next, how Raymond would report my failure, how I would be called before the Grand Master, how they would find me in my cell the next morning, dead by my own hand. I ran through the corridors of the Temple Mount, up into the sunlight. But the words followed. They appeared on the stones, in the clouds, in every shadow. They told me about the siege, how Jerusalem would fall, how most of us would die. They showed me my own death, described in careful detail. I fled down into the crypts, into the darkness beneath the temple. The words led me on, glowing like fire on the walls, down and down, past the lowest levels we knew about. Following the path the manuscript had described. The chamber was there, just as it had been written. An ancient door sealed with stranger symbols. Inside, a single stone pedestal. On it, a scroll older than any I had ever seen. My hands moved on their own as I unrolled it. The text was identical to what I had been translating above, but now I could read it properly. It wasn't a history or a prophecy. It was a trap, a test. Something left here long ago, waiting for someone like me. Someone who could read the old words. Someone who could see the truth behind them. The scroll described itself. How it would appear to the right person at the right time. How it would show them their past, their future. How it would drive them mad with knowledge they couldn't bear. And at the end, it gave them a choice. Keep reading and learn the final truth. The secret hidden beneath the Temple Mount. Or stop, walk away, live in ignorance. I reached the last paragraph. The words squirmed on the page, trying to form themselves into the ultimate revelation. My vision blurred. Blood ran from my nose. Brother Raymond found me there 3 days later, still staring at the scroll. They say I haven't spoken a word since the manuscript vanished again, waiting for the next reader. But I see the words everywhere now. In my sleep, in my food, in the faces of my brothers. They tell me what's coming. The fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of our order, the centuries of darkness ahead. I could have stopped reading, could have walked away. But once you start seeing the truth, you can't look away. You have to know how it ends. The scroll is still down there, in the darkness beneath the temple, waiting. The words are patient. They have all the time in the world. And somewhere in Jerusalem, a young scribe sits at his desk, breaking the seal on an old manuscript. The words begin to move. The cycle starts again. I see it all now. Past, present, future, they're all the same. Just words on a page, waiting to be read, waiting to be understood. The truth is there, in the darkness beneath the temple. But trust me, you don't want to know it. Some words are better left unread. Some secrets should stay buried, but you'll go looking anyway, won't you? You'll find the scroll, you'll start reading, and then it will be too late. The words are watching. They're always watching, and they're waiting for you. Story 18. The sandstorm hit us 3 hours after leaving Antioch. I'd been a Templar for 20 years, led 100 escorts through the Syrian desert, but I'd never seen a storm appear so suddenly. One moment the sky was clear. The next, a wall of sand rushed toward us from the east. Secure the reliquary, I shouted to my men. 4 knights surrounded the covered wagon at the center of our group. Inside was our cargo, a silver box containing what the Patriarch of Antioch claimed was a fragment of the true cross. The wind hit like a mace to the chest. Sand filled my nostrils, worked its way under my mail. I pulled my cloak over my face, but it did little good. Around me, my men did the same. Brother Constantine, Martin, my second in command, pointed at something. Through the swirling sand, I saw our compass spinning wildly on its mounting. The needle rotated in complete circles, faster and faster. "It's the storm," I said, playing tricks with the lodestone. But even as I spoke, noticed the needle wasn't spinning randomly. It pointed consistently toward our wagon, then snapped back north, then toward the wagon again. We had 12 men, 8 knights, 4 sergeants, all veterans, all had escorted holy relics before. But none of them would meet my eyes now. "Form closer," I ordered. "Keep the wagon in sight." The storm was getting worse. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The shadows came first. Impossible shadows in the swirling sand, moving against the wind. They looked like men, but too tall, too thin. They appeared for seconds, then vanished. Brother Constantine. This time it was Hugh, one of the sergeants. His voice shook. Look at the sand. Around the wagon, the sand wasn't falling normally. It hung in the air, forming patterns. Letters, maybe, in a script I didn't recognize. They shifted and changed before I could read them. My mouth went dry. 20 years of service, and I'd never seen anything like this. But I had heard stories, whispered tales, of other relic escorts that had disappeared in the desert, of things that waited in the storms. Keep moving, I shouted. Stay together, the wind howled, drowning my voice. That's when we lost the first man. William, a young knight on his first escort duty. One moment he was riding beside me. The next, his horse screamed. When I turned, only his empty armor remained in the saddle, arranged perfectly as if he was still wearing it. The horse bolted into the storm. No one spoke. What could we say? Another hour passed. The shadows grew bolder, closer. 2 more men vanished, leaving only empty armor. The compass spun faster. Martin rode close to me. Brother Constantine, he whispered. The reliquary, we need to check it. Our orders were clear. The seal is not to be broken. Look around us. This is no natural storm. Whatever's in that box, he was right. I had served the order long enough to know when something was wrong. The Patriarch's instructions suddenly seemed less important than keeping my remaining men alive. I called a halt. The horses huddled together, sensing something wrong. 9 riders left now. 9 sets of eyes watching me as I approached the wagon. The reliquary was small, silver and gold, carved with scenes of the crucifixion. The Patriarch's seal was still intact. My hands shook as I broke it. Inside was another box, smaller, made of olive wood. No markings, no seal, just a simple latch. The shadows pressed closer. The sand letters swirled faster. Every instinct told me to close the box, to ride as fast as we could back to Antioch. But I had to know. I opened the latch. Inside was a mirror. Just that. An old mirror in a wooden frame, its surface clouded with age. I lifted it out. No, Martin's voice cracked. Constantine, look at your reflection. I looked. The face that stared back wasn't mine, or it was, but aged 50 years. Deep lines, white hair, eyes that had seen too much. The reflection moved differently than I did. It smiled when I didn't. It mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then it changed. Now it showed Martin's face, aged the same way. Then Hugh's. Then each of my remaining men in turn. The shadows moved closer. Now I could see them clearly. They were us. Our own shapes, stretched and distorted, moving independently. Another knight vanished. Then another. Their armor fell empty to the sand. The mirror, Martin drew his sword. Destroy it, but I couldn't move. The reflection showed me what would happen next. How the shadows would take us one by one. How our armor would be found years later, scattered across the desert. How the mirror would wait for the next escort party. Martin swung his sword at the mirror. The blade passed through it like smoke. His armor clattered to the ground, empty. Now there were only 3 of us. The storm howled. The shadows reached for us with long, thin fingers. My reflection aged before my eyes. 10 years, 20, 50, 100. The sand swirled faster. Hugh was next. Then, the last sergeant. Just me now. The mirror showed my true reflection again. But now I understood. It wasn't showing age. It was showing time. All the years the mirror had waited. All the years it would continue to wait. This was no fragment of the true cross. This was something older. Something that lived in the desert long before we came. Something that fed on faith and fear and the arrogance of men who thought they could carry holy relics across its domain. My armor feels heavier now. The shadow of my hand passes through it like mist. Soon there will be nothing left but empty metal on the sand. The mirror will be found. The story will be forgotten. Another escort will be sent. But the desert remembers. The shadows remember. And in the silver surface of an ancient mirror, 12 faces watch and wait, growing older with each passing year. 12 faces that rode out of Antioch one clear morning, never suspecting what the storm would bring. The sand is taking me now. My hands fade. Like smoke, the mirror falls. But before my eyes dissolve completely, I see one last reflection. The next escort party, already riding out from Antioch. New faces, new armor, new shadows waiting to join us. The storm goes on forever. The desert keeps its secrets. And somewhere in the shifting sands, a mirror waits, collecting reflections of all who dare to cross its path, adding them to its eternal gallery of the lost. Just empty armor in the sand now. Empty armor and a mirror waiting for the next storm, the next escort, the next collection of faces to add to its collection. The desert wind howls, the shadows dance, and 12 faces watch from the mirror's clouded surface, growing older with each passing year, waiting for others to join their silent vigil in the eternal storm. Story 19. The monastery stood alone in the Pyrenees, 3 days' ride from the nearest village. I arrived as the storm clouds gathered. Lightning flashed over the mountains. My horse was exhausted. So was I 20 years as a Templar knight, and the memories wouldn't leave me alone. I needed confession. Not at our commandery. Too many familiar faces there. I needed a stranger to hear my sins. Thunder cracked overhead as I pulled the bell rope. A monk opened the gate. Old, stooped, silent. He gestured for me to follow. My boots echoed on the stone floor. The chapel was empty. Candles flickered in drafts from broken windows. The monk pointed to the confessional, then disappeared into the shadows. I entered the penitent's side, closed the wooden door. The screen between compartments was solid, with only a small grille at face height. I could see nothing of the priest's side, just darkness. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. My voice shook. It has been 3 months since my last confession. Silence from the other side. Not even the sound of breathing. Father, nothing. I started to stand, but then I heard it. My own voice, whispering back through the grille. Tell us your sins, Brother Marcus. My mouth went dry. I hadn't told anyone my name. Who's there? Silence again. Just the storm outside, rain beating against the windows. I should have left, but the weight of 20 years pressed down on me. I had to speak. I have killed men, I said. Many men, in battle. Yes, but also the merchant in Damascus. My voice again, from the other side. You stabbed him in the back, took his gold. My hands gripped the wooden bench. That was 5 years ago. No one knew. I had never told anyone. The farmer's daughter in Acre, the voice continued. You said you would help her, instead. Stop. Sweat ran down my face, despite the cold. Tell us more, Brother Marcus. Tell us everything. A shadow moved on the wall of the confessional, then another, and another. Each one shaped like a man, but wrong somehow, too tall, too thin. I led a raid on a village, I whispered. We were told they were helping the Saracens, but they were just farmers, women, children. As I spoke, the shadow of a burning village appeared on the wall. I could see figures running, falling. We killed them all, took their food, their animals. I told myself it was necessary, that we were doing God's work. Another shadow formed, a woman running with a child in her arms, a sword. Falling, the shadows began to move in procession around the confessional walls. Each one showed a different sin, a different death, everything I had done in 20 years of war. The novice you drowned. My voice from the other side was barely a whisper now. He discovered your theft from the treasury. You held him under the water and watched him die. The shadow of that death appeared. I could see the ripples in the water, the bubbles stopping. How do you know these things? My voice cracked. We know all sins, Brother Marcus. We hear all confessions. We remember everything. Lightning flashed. In that instant, I saw through the grill. The priest's side was empty, just a mirror mounted where the priest should sit. But in the mirror, I saw myself, not as I was now, as I had been during each sin. Young and strong and cruel, watching the merchant die, drowning the novice, burning the village. The shadows moved faster now, a parade of death and pain circling the confessional. Each one matched by a reflection in the mirror. 20 years of violence played out in candlelight and storm. Do you wish absolution, Brother Marcus? Yes, I could barely speak. Please, then watch. Remember, see yourself as we see you. The mirror filled with faces, the merchant, the girl, the villagers, the novice, all watching me with dead eyes. These are your judges, Brother Marcus. They have waited long for this confession. Thunder shook the chapel. The shadows closed in, reaching for me, with long, dark fingers. I tried to stand, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The faces in the mirror held me there. 20 years of sin, my voice whispered from the darkness. 20 years of death. Now it is time for judgment. The shadows touched me. Cold fingers on my skin. The faces in the mirror smiled. They found my body the next morning. The old monk, if there ever was one, was gone. The confessional stood empty, except for the mirror. They say that on stormy nights, you can still hear confession being given in that chapel. A man's voice reciting 20 years of sins. And if you look in the confessional mirror, you'll see him, young and strong again, endlessly reliving each death, each cruelty. The shadows dance on the walls. The faces watch from the mirror. And in the darkness of the priest's compartment, something waits to hear your confession. I know because I'm still there, still confessing, still watching my sins play out in candlelight and shadow. The mirror shows me everything, over and over. The merchant dying, the village burning, the novice's last bubbles breaking the surface. New sinners come sometimes. They sit where I sat, speak their sins into the darkness, and I whisper back to them, using their own voices, showing them their own shadows on the wall. The faces in the mirror watch. The shadows dance. The confession goes on forever. Join us, if you dare. The confessional waits. The mirror remembers. And in the darkness behind the grill, judgment takes many forms. But remember, once you start your confession, you can never stop. The shadows will hold you. The The faces will watch you, and your voice will join ours, whispering scenes back to future penitents until the end of time. The storm rages on. Lightning flashes, and in an empty confessional in a mountain monastery, the shadows dance to the rhythm of endless confession. Watch the mirror. See yourself. The judgment has only begun. Story 20. The merchant first came at midnight. I was alone in the Templar treasury beneath our fortress in Acre, counting the day's deposits. The year was 1191, and our vaults held more gold than most kingdoms. The knock echoed through the stone chamber. 3 sharp raps, then silence. I hadn't heard anyone descend the stairs. "Enter," I called. The iron-bound door creaked open. He was tall, dressed in rich Byzantine silk. A merchant's ring glinted on each finger. His face was pale, almost grey. In the lamplight, Brother Stephen, he knew my name. "I have a deposit to make." I didn't recognize him, but that wasn't unusual. The Templars were the bankers of the Crusader states. Merchants came from all over the known world to store their wealth in our vaults. He placed a heavy chest on my counting table. The wood was dark with age, bound in black iron. "Your name, sir?" I dipped my quill in ink. "Theodore of Constantinople." His voice was dry, like a rustling parchment. I opened the chest. Gold coins filled it to the brim. More gold than I'd seen in one deposit for months. "This will need to be counted and verified," I said. "Of course." He stood perfectly still, watching as I began to count. The coins were old, very old. Some bore the face of emperors I didn't recognize. Others had symbols I'd never seen before. My fingers trembled as I counted. The merchant didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. 1,000 gold pieces, exactly. I wrote out a receipt. "Will you require a letter of credit?" I asked. "Standard procedure for large deposits." "No." His lips barely moved. "I will return tomorrow night to make another deposit." He turned and left. His footsteps made no sound on the stone floor. I locked the chest in the vault before heading to my cell. That night, I dreamed of gold coins with faces that screamed. Morning inventory revealed something wrong. The coins had changed. Where there had been gold, I found human bones, small bones, fingers, toes, vertebrae. 1,000 exactly, each one yellowed with age. I told no one. What could I say? That I had accepted a deposit of gold that turned to bone. They would think I had gone mad. Or worse, that I had stolen the gold myself. The merchant returned the next midnight. Another chest. Another 1,000 gold pieces. His skin seemed grayer than before, almost translucent. This time, I watched the vault after locking up the coins. Through a grate in the wall, I saw them change. Gold to bone, gleaming to dull. Wealth to death. Each coin became a tiny piece of human skeleton. I checked our records. In the past month, 3 caravans had been attacked on the road from Constantinople, each one carrying exactly 1,000 gold pieces. Each one's guards and merchants found dead, their bodies stripped of small bones. The third night, I was ready. I had my sword, blessed water, holy symbols. But when Theodore of Constantinople arrived, my weapons seemed useless. His flesh had begun to rot. I could see bones through the holes in his skin. His rich clothes hung in tatters. "The final deposit," he said, placing the chest on my table. My voice shook. "I know what you are. what these deposits really are. He smiled. Bits of flesh fell from his jaw. Do you, Brother Stephen? Do you really? The caravans, the murdered merchants, these aren't your coins at all. No. His voice was hollow now, empty as a tomb. They're yours, mine. The coins you've stolen over the years, the wealth you've taken from those who trusted the Templars. His eye sockets were black pits. We're just returning them to you. My legs went weak. We, who is we? Those you've robbed. Those who died because of your greed. We've been watching you, Brother Stephen, counting every coin you stole, and now we're paying it all back. I drew my sword. The blade passed through him like smoke. He opened the chest. Inside, I saw my own face reflected in the gold coins, but not as I was now, as I had been each time I stole, each time I took what wasn't mine. 3,000 pieces in total, he said. One for each gold coin you've stolen in your years of service. One for each life your greed has destroyed. The bones began to rise from the vault. Clicking and rattling, they assembled themselves in the air, forming shapes, human shapes. I recognized some of the faces taking form before me. Merchants I had cheated, guards who had died protecting gold I had stolen, the poor who had trusted the Templars with their savings. Time to make your own deposit, Brother Stephen. They surrounded me. Hands made of finger bones reached for my flesh. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Your greed fed us. Theodore's voice came from everywhere now. Your sins gave us form. Now you'll join us in the vault, counting your coins for eternity. The bones pulled me apart piece by piece. I felt each separation, each rending of flesh from flesh. My screams echoed through the treasury. When the other brothers found the vault in the morning, they discovered 3,000 gold coins stacked neatly on the counting table. Real coins this time. All the wealth I had stolen over the years. And in the corner, a pile of bones. Some old, some fresh. 1,000 fingers. 1,000 toes. 1,000 vertebrae. Each one perfectly clean. They say the treasury is haunted now. At midnight, you can hear counting from behind its iron doors. The clicking of bone on bone as someone tallies an endless sum. Sometimes, merchants still come to make deposits. A tall figure in rotting Byzantine silk. A face that's more bone than flesh. They say he has many faces, all of them familiar to the brothers who worked there. And in the vault, the bones wait, counting, remembering, adding new numbers to their eternal ledger. I know because I'm there too, still counting, still paying my debt. Every night, Theodore brings more coins, more bones, more faces I have to remember. The vaults of Acre hold more than gold now. They hold justice. They hold memory. They hold the price of greed, counted out in bits of bone. And if you listen closely at midnight, you can hear us counting, forever counting. Each bone a coin, each coin a sin, each sin a debt that must be paid. The ledger never closes, the counting never stops. And in the depths of the treasury, Theodore of Constantinople still makes his deposits, one bone at a time. Story 21. The crypt had been sealed for 300 years. I stood before its iron door in the lowest level of our commandery in rural France, holding the commander's orders in my shaking hands. My assignment was simple: guard the crypt for one night. No one had explained why a sealed tomb needed guarding. The year was 1307. I was a sergeant at arms, 15 years in service to the Templars. I'd fought in battles, guarded treasures, protected pilgrim routes. But something about this door made my skin crawl. Ancient symbols were carved into the iron. Not Christian crosses or Templar marks, but older signs I didn't recognize. The door had no handle, no keyhole, just a small viewing slot at eye level, currently closed. I lit my lantern and settled onto the stone bench beside the door. The commander's orders were specific. Remain at my post until dawn. Report any sounds or disturbances, and under no circumstances open the viewing slot. The first hours passed quietly. Water dripped. Somewhere in the darkness, rats scurried in the shadows. Normal sounds for an old crypt. Then, at midnight exactly, I heard it. A scraping sound from behind the door, like stone being dragged across stone. My hand went to my sword hilt. The scraping continued, regular as a heartbeat. Drag, pause, drag, pause. Then came the knocking. 3 sharp raps on the iron door. The sound echoed through the corridor. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. No answer, just more knocking. The viewing slot rattled. Something on the other side wanted to be seen. I remembered my orders. Do not open the slot. Do not look inside. The knocking grew louder. The scraping continued underneath it. Now I could hear something else. A voice, barely audible, tapping out a rhythm against the door. It was using the Templar code. The secret patterns of knocks we use to identify ourselves to other brothers. My fingers twitched, wanting to respond. The message repeated, open, watch, learn. My training screamed at me, too. Ignore it, but 15 years of responding to that code had made it instinct. Before I could stop myself, my knuckles rapped out the acknowledgement pattern. The slot burst open. I jumped back, dropping my lantern. It shattered, plunging the corridor into darkness. Light spilled from the viewing slot. Not torchlight, but a cold, blue glow. It illuminated the corridor in patches, creating strange shadows on the walls. A voice whispered from behind the door, "Brother Michael, we've been waiting for you." I had never told anyone my name. It wasn't written on the commander's orders. "What are you?" My sword scraped free of its scabbard. Look inside, see the truth. Against every instinct, I approached the slot. The blue light grew brighter. I looked. The crypt beyond the door was massive, far larger than should have been possible. Stone pillars stretched into darkness, and in the center, a single figure stood at attention. It wore Templar armor, ancient and rust-stained. Where its face should have been, there was only shadow. It held a sword in a guard position, unmoving. As I watched, it began to tap its sword against the stone floor. The scraping sound I'd heard earlier. The figure raised its helm to look at me. Inside was a desiccated face, centuries old, but still recognizable. I'd seen it in the portraits in the commandery's great hall. This was Brother Gigome, the first commander of this house. He'd died defending these vaults in 1014. The vigil continues. His voice rasped, as it has for 300 years. As it will until the end. More figures emerged from the shadows. More Templars in ancient armor. Each one a guardian I recognized from the portraits. Each one still standing there post-centuries after death. They moved in perfect unison, swords tapping against stone. The sound formed words in Templar code. "Join us. Take your place. The vigil must be maintained." My sword clattered to the floor. This was impossible. These men had died hundreds of years ago. "What are you guarding?" I managed to ask. "The secret," Gialam's hollow voice echoed. The truth buried beneath this commandery. The reason for our order's existence. What secret? Look deeper. I pressed my face to the slot. Beyond the figures, in the furthest shadows, something moved. Something huge. Something that shouldn't exist. My mind recoiled from what I saw. This was why the crypt was sealed. Why it needed eternal guards. Now you understand, Gideon said. Now? You know why we can never leave our post? Why the vigil must continue? The other figures moved closer to the slot. Their armor creaked with age. Their empty eyes fixed on me. The door will open at dawn, Gidjam continued. You will enter. You will take your place among us. The vigil must be maintained. I tried to run. My legs wouldn't move. The blue light held me there. The figures began their code tapping again. The message hammered into my brain. The vigil continues. The vigil continues. They found me the next morning, still staring through the slot. When the commander arrived, I was tapping out the code against the door. I couldn't stop. They assigned a new guard that night. He disappeared completely. The next guard lasted 2 nights before they found him speaking in code, describing horrors no mortal mind could hold. I'm still here, in the lowest level of the commandery, still watching through the slot. The blue light never fades. The tapping never stops. Sometimes, new guards come. They look through the slot. They see what lies in the deepest shadows. They join us, one by one. The vigil continues. It must continue. What we guard can never be allowed to wake. I see Guillaume every night now, standing at his post. Sometimes he turns and nods to me. Soon, he says, soon I'll take my place beside him. The door will open. We'll guard the secret together, forever. Listen, do you hear the tapping? The code is calling. The vigil needs new guardians. Look through. The slots see what we see. Join us in our eternal watch. The vigil continues. It must continue. And in the deepest shadows, something stirs and waits and dreams of freedom. Story 22. I found the text in the deepest level of the Jerusalem catacombs. Not in the public areas where pilgrims visited, but in the sealed chambers below, where the Templars kept their oldest documents. The year was 1298. I had worked as a copyist for the order for 12 years, but I'd never seen anything like this manuscript. The parchment was old, far older than anything else in our archives. The Latin text showed signs of water damage, but most of it remained legible. My assignment was simple: make a complete copy for the Grand Master's private library. Brother Raymond, the chief archivist, handed me the manuscript himself. His hands shook. Work only at night, he said. Tell no one what you read. And Thomas. He gripped my arm. If the words change, stop immediately. I laughed. Words don't change, Brother Raymond. He didn't smile. These do. I set up my writing desk in the archive chamber. 1 candle, fresh quills, my best ink. The first page seemed straightforward. A history of the Temple Mount's construction. The copying went smoothly for the first hour. Then I noticed something odd. A sentence I had just copied didn't match the original anymore. Where I had written the foundations were laid in ancient times. The source text now read, "The foundations wait in darkness." I blinked hard. When I looked again, the original text was back to what it had been. Just a trick of the candlelight. It had to be. I kept writing. The manuscript described secret chambers. Beneath the temple, Ancient vaults, sealed for centuries. Standard history, nothing unusual. But as I copied, other words began appearing between the lines. Names, dates, prophecies. I saw Brother Marcus's name. He had died of fever just last week, but this text was centuries old. I looked again. Now it named Brother Augustus, who had served in Jerusalem 80 years ago. My hands trembled as I dipped my quill. The ink looked darker than before, almost black in the candlelight. The next passage made me stop completely. It described a meeting that would happen tomorrow. Names, locations, exact words that would be spoken. I hadn't even heard about this meeting. I stood up, paced the chamber. When I returned to my desk, that section had vanished. Instead, the text now detailed a betrayal that would happen next month. A list of brothers who would turn against the order. My chest felt tight. Sweat ran down my back despite the cool air. I had to keep copying. The Grand Master was waiting. But the words wouldn't stay still. They crawled across the page like insects, forming new sentences, new meanings. One paragraph described the fall of Jerusalem, not in the past, but in the future. Another listed names of Templars yet to be born. I came to a page that made my blood freeze. It described me. My childhood in France. The sister I had abandoned. The lies I had told to join the order. I slammed the manuscript shut. This was impossible. No one knew those things. I had never told anyone. The manuscript fell open again on its own. Different pages now, but still about me. Every secret, every sin. Things I had tried to forget. Brother Raymond found me huddled in the corner at dawn. The manuscript lay open on the desk, its pages blank. "What did you read?" he demanded. "Everything," I whispered. "The past, the future, myself." He nodded grimly. "They all see themselves in it eventually. That's how it works. What is it? A trap? A test? Something left here long ago, waiting for readers like us. It shows us what we need to see, what we fear to see." I looked at my unfinished copy. The words I had written were changing even as I watched, rearranging themselves into new prophecies, new revelations. "Keep copying," Raymond said. "You have no choice now. Once you start reading, you have to finish. But the words, they won't stay the same. No, they never do. Each reader sees something different. Each copy tells a new truth." I returned to my desk. The manuscript's pages were full again, but with different text. Now it told the future of our order. Betrayal, arrest, torture, death by fire. My hands shook as I copied. Names of brothers who would die, dates of executions, the charges that would be brought against us, all written centuries before they would happen. "How can this be?" I asked. Raymond's eyes were dark. "The manuscript writes itself. It knows things. Past, present, future. It shows each reader what they most need to see, or most fear to see, and we just keep copying it. Spreading these prophecies, we have no choice. It wants to be copied. It wants to be read. Each new copy shows new truths, new futures." I worked through the night. The text changed constantly now. One page spoke of ancient secrets hidden beneath the temple. Another listed every sin ever committed within these walls. A third showed my own death, described in perfect detail. My quill scratched across the parchment. The sound echoed strangely in the empty chamber. Each word I copied felt heavier than the last. Dawn approached. The final pages showed things I can't describe. Truths no mortal mind was meant to know. My nose began to bleed. My vision blurred, but I couldn't stop copying. The words compelled me. Each sentence had to be preserved, even as it changed into something new. The last page nearly broke me. It showed everything: the pattern behind history, the truth beneath reality. My mind recoiled from what I read. They found me at my desk, still copying. The original manuscript had vanished. My copy was blank, except for a single sentence, written over and over. The truth cannot be copied. The truth cannot be contained. I haven't spoken since that night. The words are still there, in my mind, changing and shifting, showing me new truths, new horrors. Sometimes I see other copyists in the archives, working on their own versions of the manuscript. Each one sees something different. Each one goes mad in their own way. The original text appears to new readers when it chooses. It shows them what they need to see, what they fear to see. And somewhere in Jerusalem's deepest vaults, words continue to crawl across ancient pages, writing and rewriting themselves, waiting for the next reader to discover their terrible truths. I still try to copy them sometimes. My hands shake, but I can't stop. The words compel me. They want to be written, even as they change. But no copy is ever the same. No truth stays fixed. The manuscript knows too much, shows too much. And in the darkness beneath the temple, it waits for new readers, new truths, new horrors to reveal. The words are watching. They're always watching. And they're waiting for you to start reading. Story 23. The storm hit as I patrolled the Camino de Santiago. Thunder cracked overhead. Rain turned the pilgrim road to mud. I had been a Templar guard on this route for 10 years, but I'd never seen weather come on this suddenly. An old woman stood in the middle of the path, bent against the wind. She wore a pilgrim's rough cloak, carried a wooden staff. No one else would be traveling in this storm. "Mother," I called out, spurring my horse closer. "The nearest shelter is our commandery, half a mile ahead. Let me escort you." She looked up. Her face shifted in the rain. Young, then old, then young again. I blinked hard, but the changes continued. "Brother James," her voice carried over the wind. "I've waited long to meet you." I hadn't told her my name. My hand moved to my sword hilt. "How do you know me?" "I know all the guardians of the way." Her face changed again. Now middle-aged, now ancient. "I know their deeds, their failures." Lightning flashed. In that instant, I saw other figures on the road behind her. More pilgrims, barely visible in the rain. Their faces were familiar. "Jean-Pierre," she said, pointing to one. "You let him die last winter. You were warm in the commandery while he froze in the snow." My mouth went dry. I remembered finding that pilgrim's body, Maria. She pointed to another shape. She begged for protection from bandits. "You were too busy counting your bribes to help." The figures moved closer. I could see their faces clearly now. Every pilgrim who had died under my watch. Every traveler I had failed to protect. "This isn't real," I said. "You're not real. I am all pilgrims." Her voice came from everywhere now, young and old at once. "I am the way itself, and you have failed in your sacred duty." More shapes emerged from the rain. Dozens now, hundreds. Each one someone I should have helped. Someone I had let die. My horse reared. I fought to control it as the figures surrounded us. 10 years, the woman said. 10 years of neglect, of looking the other way, of taking money to ignore your vows. Stop, my voice cracked. Please, shall we count them, one by one? Her face shifted faster now, becoming each dead pilgrim in turn. Shall we tell their stories? The figures pressed closer. Their touch was cold as death. They pulled at my cloak, my armor. You swore to protect us. The voice came from all of them now. You swore to keep the way safe. Lightning revealed their faces in stark detail. The old man eyed, ignored last spring, who died of exposure. The young mother killed by wolves while I slept at my post. The merchant family slaughtered by bandits after I took their bribe. No, I tried to turn my horse, but we couldn't move. The dead pilgrims held us fast. You must walk with us now. The old woman's staff had become a sword. Walk the way as we walked it. Feel what we felt. The cold reached into my bones. My hands went numb. The pilgrims pulled me from my saddle. Please, I begged. I'll do better, I'll keep my vows. Too late. Her face showed them all now, cycling through the dead. The way remembers. The way demands justice. They dragged me down into the mud. Hundreds of cold hands, hundreds of accusing faces. The rain turned to ice against my skin. Walk with us, Brother James. Their voices merged into one. Walk until you've paid for every life lost, every vow broken. I felt the cold enter my heart. My vision darkened. The last thing I saw was the old woman's face, young, old, dead, alive, smiling down at me. They found my horse the next morning, still standing in the rain. My body lay in the mud nearby, frozen solid despite the warm spring weather. Other Templars guard the way now. Sometimes they see an old woman walking in storms. Her face changes as she walks. She asks them their names, reminds them of their vows. And in the darkest nights, when thunder rolls across the pilgrim road, travelers say they see a procession. Hundreds of figures walking through the rain. At their center, a Templar in mud-stained armor, forever walking the path he failed to protect. I know because I walk with them. The cold never leaves now. The faces never stop changing. Each night we trace the route again, remembering every failure, every death. New pilgrims join us sometimes. New faces in our endless procession, and always the old woman leads us on. Young and old, dead and alive, watching the ways, new guardians. She tests them as she tested me, shows them what happens to those who break their vows, those who fail in their sacred duty. The way remembers, the way demands justice. And in the storm and darkness, we walk on forever. Join us, if you dare. The old woman waits by the roadside, her face shifting like shadows in rain. She knows your name, she knows your deeds. And the pilgrims walk beside you, cold hands reaching, dead eyes watching, waiting to welcome another failed guardian to their eternal procession. The storm never ends, the way never forgets. And somewhere on the road to Santiago, an old woman walks through the rain, her face changing with every step, waiting to meet the next Templar, who has forgotten his vows. Listen for her in the thunder, look for her in the lightning flash. But remember, once you see her true face, you'll walk the way forever, paying for every life lost under your watch. The pilgrims are waiting. The judgment has begun, and the procession goes on eternal. Story 24. I found the seal while organizing the archive room of our Paris commandery. It was 1306, less than a year before everything would change. The seal lay at the bottom of an old chest, wrapped in oilcloth. I'd never seen one like it. Most Templar seals showed 2 knights on 1 horse, our symbol of poverty. This one displayed a hooded figure holding scales. The Latin inscription named a Grand Master I'd never heard of. Jacobus Geteminus, last master of the temple. I checked up records. No Jacobus Determinus had ever led the order, and last master, that made no sense. Our current Grand Master, Jacques de Mal, was healthy and strong. My job was simple: catalogue and store documents. But this seal drew my eye. I couldn't look away from it. That night, I found it on new documents. Papers I had just filed showed the strange seal, though I hadn't stamped them. Records of grain shipments, guard rotations, banking transactions, all now bore the mark of this unknown Grand Master. My hands shook as I examined the papers. The seal couldn't have appeared on its own. Someone must have stamped them while I wasn't looking. I locked the archive room before leaving, double-checked every lock. But when I returned the next morning, more documents bore the mysterious seal. Even blank parchment had been stamped. The seal showed up on every new document that entered the archive. Letters, orders, receipts. As soon as I filed them, the mark appeared. Always the same hooded figure, always the name of the last master. Brother Gerard, the head archivist, didn't believe me at first. Seals don't appear by themselves, he said, but I showed him. We watched together as the mark formed on a fresh letter, the wax seeming to flow into shape on its own. Gerard's face went pale. "Destroy it," he said. "Melt it down. This is devil's work." I tried. The seal wouldn't melt, wouldn't break, wouldn't even scratch. It sat in the flames untouched, the hooded figure seeming to watch us. More documents arrived each day. More seals appeared. Now they showed up on papers before I even filed them. The moment a document entered the archive, the mark formed. The dates on the sealed papers began to change. Future dates, next week, next month, next year, and the contents grew darker. Orders for mass arrests, lists of brothers to be tortured, confessions not yet made. Each document bore the seal of Jacobus Determinus, last master of the temple. My hands trembled as I read. This was impossible. The order was strong, protected by the Pope himself. Yet here were detailed accounts of our destruction, stamped with the seal of a master who didn't exist. I saw my own name in the documents, the date and manner of my arrest, the confessions I would make under torture, the sentence that would be passed. Gerard found me studying the papers late one night. His face was grey. "You've seen it too?" he asked. "The future," I nodded. "But we can warn them, show them these documents, stop it from happening." "Look at the seal again," he said. "Look closely." I held it up to the lamplight. The hooded figure moved. Just slightly, but enough to see. It raised its head. The face under the hood was mine. "You understand now." Gerard's voice shook. "Why you found it. Why it shows you these things." My legs went weak. I can't be. Jacobus Determinus, the last master. The one who survives to record our end. The seal grew warm in my hands. Documents fluttered around us, each one bearing the mark. Future records, future deaths, the complete account of the Order's destruction. When I could barely speak. Soon, the seal knows. The seal always knows. More papers appeared daily. Arrest records, torture accounts, lists of seized properties, each one stamped with my future seal, my future name. I watched our brothers in the commandery, knowing their fates, knowing I would record their ends, knowing I would survive to tell the story. The seal burns hot now. Documents appear faster. Next week's arrests, next month's trials, next year's executions. I can't stop recording them. Can't stop the seal from marking each page. They're coming tomorrow. King Philip's men. I've seen the arrest orders, stamped with my seal, seen the names, seen the fates that await us. But I'll survive. The seal has shown me. I'll live to record it all, to stamp each document, to witness our orders end. The seal burns in my hands as I write this. The hood, the face, they're fully mine now. Jacobus Determinus, the last master, the one who remains to tell the tale. Look for my seal in the archives, on the darkest documents, on the records of our fall. The hooded figure watches. The scales weigh our fates. And somewhere in Paris, a future awaits. A future where I stamp the final records of the Knights Templar with a seal that found me before I knew myself. The parchment grows warm beneath my hands. The seal appears even as I write these words. The last record, the last witness, Jacobus Determinus. The last master of the temple, the one who sees the end before it comes. The seal knows. The seal always knows. And tomorrow, the arrests begin. Story 25. The siege of Tomar had lasted 3 months. As chief guardian of the keys, I was responsible for all 47 locks in the fortress. Every night, I checked each one personally. The Moors hadn't breached our walls yet, but the real threat came from within. The first key disappeared on a Tuesday, the small brass one that opened the kitchen storage. I had locked it myself the night before, but in the morning, the door stood open. The key was gone from my ring. Brother Manuel found me. Examining the lock, forgotten to secure it. Stephen, no. I held up my key ring. The brass key's leather loop was still intact, but empty. It's vanished, he laughed. Keys don't vanish, but the next night, it happened again. The iron key to the west tower, gone. Its door stood open, though I distinctly remembered locking it. The guards swore no one had passed them. My hands shook as I checked the remaining keys. All present, but for how long? The third night, 3 more disappeared. Each time, their doors were found open. No signs of forced entry. No broken locks. Just empty chambers that should have been sealed. Brother Commander called me to his office. Explain, he said. I laid out my key ring. 5 empty loops now. I check them nightly, Commander. I never leave them unattended. Yet doors are opening. Sealed chambers are being breached. I can't explain it, sir. The keys simply vanish. His eyes narrowed. Nothing simply vanishes, Brother Stephen. Find them, or you'll answer for every breach. That night, I stayed awake, watching my keys. Moonlight glinted off their metal. The ring never left my belt, but in the morning, 2 more were gone. Their doors stood open, revealing chambers I'd never seen before. Ancient rooms, deep within the fortress walls. The first contained an altar. Not a Christian altar. Something older. The stone was stained dark, its surface carved with symbols I didn't recognize. The second chamber held bones. Hundreds of them, arranged in Patterns on the floor. Human bones, but misshapen, wrong somehow. My throat went dry. These rooms didn't appear on any fortress plans. They shouldn't exist. More keys vanished each night. More doors opened. Each chamber revealed new horrors. Ritual circles carved into stone. Walls covered in writing that hurt my eyes to read. Collections of objects that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. The other brothers began avoiding me. They crossed themselves when I passed, whispered about curses, about dark magic within the fortress walls. "It's not possible," Brother Manuel said when I showed him the altar room. "These chambers can't exist. There isn't space for them in the fortress." But they did exist. And each night, more keys disappeared. More doors opened. More secrets revealed themselves. I found records in one room. Ancient documents detailing rituals performed by the first Templars to occupy Tomar. Things that had nothing to do with Christianity. Things that made my blood run cold. Another chamber contained implements of strange design. Metal tools that hummed faintly, even though they were centuries old. Glass vessels filled with liquids that moved against gravity. The remaining keys grew warm on my belt. They seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat. Sometimes I heard them whispering at night, speaking in languages I almost understood. Brother Commander ordered the open chambers sealed. Mason brothers built walls across their entrances, but each morning the new walls had vanished. The doors stood open, mocking our efforts. 20 keys gone now. 20 chambers discovered. The fortress felt different, larger somehow. The corridors stretched longer than they should. Stairs led to levels that couldn't exist. I stopped sleeping. The keys' whispers grew louder. They wanted me to find something. Something hidden in the deepest chambers of Tomar. More brothers disappeared. We found their clothes outside sealed doors, as if they had simply walked out of them, leaving their garments behind. 30 keys gone. 30 chambers open. The Moorish siege seemed distant now, unimportant compared to what was happening within our walls. I found Brother Manuel standing before a newly opened door. He stared into the darkness beyond, mumbling prayers. "Do you see them?" he asked. "The ones who came before, the true builders of Tomar." Before I could answer, he walked through the doorway. His robes fell empty to the floor. Beyond the threshold, something moved in the shadows. 40 keys gone now. Only 7 remained. Each night, their whispers grew clearer. They told me about the thing beneath Tomar, the reason the fortress was built, the truth behind our order. The last door waited at the bottom of a spiral stair that wound impossibly deep into the earth. My final key grew hot enough to burn. Its whispers became screams. Brother Commander found me there, staring at the door. "Don't," he said. "Some locks are meant to stay closed." But the key moved on its own, turning in the lock. The door swung open. Beyond it lay a chamber larger than the entire fortress above. Its walls were mirrors, reflecting infinitely. And in each reflection, I saw myself. But not just me now. Every guardian who had ever held the keys. Every brother who had discovered the truth. They stood in endless ranks, watching, waiting. Their keys floated before them, glowing with inner light. "Welcome, Brother Stephen." Their voices spoke as one. "Take your place. The vigil continues." I stepped through the doorway. My robes fell empty behind me. Now I stand with the others, watching through our mirrors. The keys float before us, burning like stars. New guardians come sometimes. They find their own keys. open their own doors. Join us in our eternal watch. The fortress above changes. Different armies, different sieges. But we remain, the original guardians, the ones who found the truth. Look for us in Tomar's deepest chambers. Listen for the whisper of keys in the night. But remember, once a door opens, it can never be closed again. The keys are calling. Can you hear them? They have such secrets to show you.